What if Drogo's Khalasar invaded Westeros during the War of the Five Kings? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The wound burns like fire across Drogo's chest, but the fever has broken. 3 days since the battle with Ogo's riders. 3 days since the cut that should have claimed the Great Coal's life. Daenerys sits beside him in the tent, watching the rise and fall of his breathing. The flap of bloody skin where his left nipple had been torn away has stopped weeping. The gash along his arm where Ogo's arak found its mark has sealed itself shut. "My son and stars," she whispers, placing her hand on his forehead. The skin is warm but not burning. The delirium has passed. Drogo's eyes open, dark and fierce, just as they should be. He stares at her for a long moment, then pushes himself up on his elbows. The movement sends pain shooting through his chest, but he does not cry out. A call does not show weakness, not even to his Khaleesi. "I live," he says in Dothraki, his voice rough from days of silence. "You live," Daenerys agrees, and the relief in her voice nearly breaks her composure. For 3 days she had prepared herself to smother him with a pillow, to end his suffering as tradition demanded. For 3 days she had imagined herself walking into those flames with dragon eggs that would never hatch. Now everything has changed. Drogo sits up fully, wincing at the pull of healing flesh. His Khalasar waits beyond the tent walls. 40,000 riders who had begun to whisper about choosing a new call. 40,000 who had started to eye the horizon, wondering if they should ride east to Vice Dothrak or west toward fresher hunting grounds. "Bring me my blood riders," Drogo commands. Kaholo enters first, followed by Aggo and Rakaro. All 3 men stop short when they see their call, sitting upright, alive and aware. Kaholo drops to one knee. "Blood of my blood," he says. "You thought I would die like a woman in childbed." Drogo cuts him off. His voice carries the edge of command that has kept this Khalasar together through 100 raids. "But I am Drogo, Khal of the great grass sea. I do not die from the scratch of a dog's arak." The Blood Riders exchange glances. They had prepared for succession, for the choosing of a new call, or the breaking of the Khalasar. Instead, their leader lives, scarred but strong. "What news?" Drogo asks. Aggo steps forward. "Riders returned from the Royan yesterday, blood of my blood. They bring strange tales from across the narrow sea." "Speak." "The usurper king is dead. Robert Baratheon, the fat man, who broke Prince Rhaegar's chest with his warhammer. A boar's tusk opened his belly during a hunt." Daenerys feels her heart quicken. Robert Baratheon dead. The man who had driven her family into exile, who had placed a price on her head. Dead. "There is more," Rakaro adds. "The hand who served him, Eddard Stark of the North. The boy king cut off his head before all of King's Landing." Drogo's eyes narrow. He knows these names from Daenerys' stories, from old Jorah's tales of Westeros. "The Wolf Lord is dead?" "His head decorates a spike," Aggo confirms. "And now 5 kings claim the Iron Throne. Brothers fight brothers. The realm bleeds." Drogo is silent for a long moment, processing this information. Daenerys watches him think, sees the calculations forming behind his dark eyes. She has told him the stories of her ancestors, of Aegon the Conqueror, who bent the 7 kingdoms to his will with 3 dragons. But dragons have been dead for more than a century. What is left are horses, and 40,000 riders who follow the strongest call. 5 kings, Drogo repeats slowly, fighting each other. "The realm tears itself apart," Kaholo says. "City fights city, brother fights brother. Their armies grow smaller with each battle." Daenerys sees it in her husband's expression before he speaks. the hunger of a predator sensing wounded prey, the calculating look of a Khal who has built the largest Khalasar in memory by knowing when to strike. The iron chair sits across the narrow sea, Drogo says, his voice growing stronger with each word. The throne of the Dragon Kings. The usurper is dead. His realm crumbles, and my son will need a kingdom. His hand moves to Daenerys's belly, where their child grows. In the original timeline, that child would have been stillborn, twisted by blood magic into something monstrous. But there is no blood magic here, no desperate bargains with Miri Maz-Dur, only a Khal's son growing in his Khaleesi's womb. My son and stars, Daenerys begins, but Drogo raises a hand to silence her. I have heard the stories, moon of my life, how your ancestor conquered 7 kingdoms with 3 dragons. But the dragons are gone. The Dragon Kings are gone. All that remains are horses. He stands, ignoring the pain in his chest, and walks to the tent's entrance. Beyond the felt walls, his Khalasar spreads across the grass, like a city of leather and horsehair. 40,000 riders who have followed him from the Shadowlands to the Rhoyne. Warriors who have never known defeat under his leadership. 40,000 horses, he says, 40,000 riders who have broken every enemy they have faced, and across the sea, 5 kings who bleed each other dry. Daenerys feels her breath catch. She has dreamed of this moment since childhood, the dream of going home, of reclaiming her birthright. But she had imagined it would come through dragons or marriage alliances, through the careful games that Illyrio and Viserys had played for years. She had never imagined it would come like this, with Dothraki war cries and the thunder of hooves. The 7 kingdoms, she whispers, will kneel, Drogo finishes, or they will burn. He turns back to his blood riders. The pain of his wounds seems forgotten now, replaced by something fiercer. The look of a Khal who has found his next hunt. Send riders to Pentos, he commands. Tell the fat man Illyrio that the dragon has awakened. Tell him Drogo will cross the water, and he will need ships. Many ships. Koholo nods and hurries from the tent. Aggo and Rakaro remain, waiting for further orders. Gather the Khos, Drogo continues. Every captain in the Khalasar. We ride for the free cities within the week. By the time the grass grows tall, we will water our horses in the Blackwater. As his blood riders hurry to carry out his commands, Drogo returns to Daenerys' side. He takes her hand, his calloused fingers tracing the silver of her marriage band. Your brother promised you an army to take back your father's throne, he says quietly. A crown for a crown, he said. But Viserys was weak, and weak men make weak promises. I am not weak. Daenerys looks into his eyes and sees the truth there. This is not the fevered dream of a dying man or the empty boasts of a brother who sold her for soldiers. This is Khal Drogo, the strongest of the Horse Lords, making a promise that will reshape the world. The Iron Throne, she says, will be yours, he replies, and our son will sit upon it after you. Outside the tent, the Khalasar begins to stir. Word spreads quickly among the Dothraki. The Khal lives. The Khal has chosen his next hunt. Across the grass, men begin checking their equipment, sharpening their araks, preparing for the greatest raid in their people's history. The wound on Drogo's chest throbs as he embraces his Khaleesi, but he pays it no mind. Pain is temporary. Conquest is forever. And across the narrow sea, 5 kings tear each other apart, never knowing that the greatest threat to their thrones has just risen from what should have been his deathbed. The storm is coming to Westeros, and it rides a Dothraki horse. Chapter 2. When the seahorse meets the wolf. The War Council, gathers beneath the tent of black horsehair. Maps of Westeros spread across low tables, their edges weighted down with Dothraki weapons. Drogo sits cross-legged at the center, his healing wounds hidden beneath leather and silk. The scar across his chest pulls tight as he leans forward to study the foreign coastlines. Jorah Mormont kneels beside the largest map, his exile's knowledge suddenly invaluable. 5 kings, blood of my blood, he says in careful Dothraki. Each one believes the Iron Throne belongs to him. Tell me of these kings, Drogo commands. Jorah's weathered finger traces the map from King's Landing northward. Joffrey Baratheon holds the capital. Though his bloodline is questioned, they say he is bastard-born of his mother's brother. A false king, Daenerys observes from her place beside Drogo. Like the usurper before him. The boy has the Lannister army and the gold of Casterly Rock, Jorah continues. Perhaps 60,000 men, but they are spread thin across the realm. His grandfather Tywin Lannister leads them. The old lion is cunning and ruthless. Drogo grunts acknowledgement. He understands cunning enemies. They make the best prey. Here, Jorah moves to Dragonstone on the map. Sits Stannis Baratheon, the dead king's brother. He claims the throne by right of succession. 20,000 men, perhaps less. His ships are strong, but his army is weak. And the other brother? Renly Baratheon commands from Storm's End and Highgarden, the largest army, near 100,000 men. But he is young and soft. He plays at war like it were a tourney. Drogo's eyes narrow with interest. Numbers matter, but so does the quality of leadership. 100,000 sheep remain sheep, no matter how many follow their shepherd. The 4th king? He asks. Robb Stark, the young wolf. Jorah's voice carries a note of respect. Ned Stark's son, crowned king in the north after his father's execution. He has perhaps 20,000 men, but they are hard fighters. Mountain clans, northern lords who have known nothing but war against wildlings and raiders. This boy king, Drogo says slowly. He fights, Jorah confirms. Word reached Pentos yesterday. The young wolf trapped a Lannister army at the Whispering Wood, took Jaime Lannister himself captive. Then he crushed another force at River Run. Drogo sits back, processing this information. A boy who captures lions and wins battles against experienced commanders. This is not the soft lordling he had expected. The 5th king? Balon Greyjoy of the Iron Islands. Pirates and raiders like the Dothraki but weaker. They take what they cannot hold, and hold what they cannot defend. Aggo enters the tent, dusty from hard riding. He drops to one knee before his call. Blood of my blood, riders return from Norvos. They bring fresh news. Speak. The boy wolf strikes again. His army fell upon Lord Stafford Lannister at Oxcross. The Westermen were scattered like leaves. 3,000 dead, their camp burned, their supplies taken. Drogo exchanges glances with Daenerys. This Stark boy fights like a Dothraki Khal, swift, decisive, leaving devastation in his wake. Where does he ride now? Drogo asks. West, toward the Lannister lands. He burns their mines and raids their villages. The lions bleed gold and men. Jorah studies the map with new interest. If the young wolf drives deep into the Westerlands, Tywin will have to respond. The realm's armies will be even more divided. Drogo rises and walks to the tent's entrance. Beyond the felt walls, his Khalasar prepares for movement. Riders secure leather packs, women dismantle cooking fires, children help load the great wheeled carts. 40,000 souls preparing to cross the grass toward their destiny. The wolf boy fights well, he says to Jorah. But wolves and horses are not enemies. Both hunt the same prey. My sun and stars? Daenerys approaches. understanding flickering in her violet eyes. "The realm tears itself apart," Drogo explains. "Brothers fight brothers, wolves hunt lions, but none of them think to watch the horizon. None of them expect the Dothraki." He turns back to the map, his scarred finger tracing the coastline of the Stormlands. "Here," he says, tapping the parchment south of Storm's End. "Empty beaches, weakly held. While their armies bleed in the Riverlands and the West, we take their soft underbelly." Jorah nods slowly. The Stormlands are loyal to Renly, but his host is with him at Highgarden. The castles are undermanned. "And from the Stormlands?" Drogo asks. 2 days hard riding to King's Landing. 3 days to the Reach. You could strike anywhere in the south before their armies could respond." Drogo smiles, the expression sharp as an arak's edge. "Then we ride for Pentos. The fat man Illyrio will give us ships, or we will take them." "Blood of my blood," Koholo interjects from the tent's entrance. "How many ships? The Khalasar numbers 40,000 horses, 40,000 riders." "Every ship in Pentos, if needed," Drogo replies. "Every vessel in Tirosh and Lys. The free cities grow fat on Westerosi gold. Now they will pay their debt with wood and sail." He calls for his blood riders to approach the map. "Aggo, ride to Pentos ahead of the Khalasar. Tell Illyrio that the dragon's husband requires passage across the water. Tell him the terms are not negotiable." "And if he refuses?" Aggo asks. "Then Pentos burns," Drogo says simply. "But he will not refuse. The fat man is clever, and clever men do not fight the storm. They shelter from it." Rakaro steps forward. "Koholo and I will range ahead to Tirosh and Lys. If Pentos cannot provide enough ships, we will negotiate with the other cities." "Or take their ships," Koholo adds with a grin. Drogo nods approval. His blood riders understand the way of things. Negotiate from strength, but be prepared to take what diplomacy cannot secure. "Khaleesi," he says to Daenerys, "send ravens to your contacts in the free cities. Let them know the dragon stirs. Some will aid us willingly for gold and future favor. Others will need encouragement." Daenerys moves closer to the map, her hand tracing the narrow sea between Essos and Westeros. "What of the other kings? Should we not consider alliance?" "With which one?" Jorah asks. "Each fights the others. Each would use our strength to crush his enemies, then turn on us when we grow inconvenient." Drogo considers this. The exile speaks wisdom. Alliances work only when both sides have something to gain and something to lose. But these Westerosi kings are desperate men fighting for survival. Desperate men make poor allies. We ally with none of them, he decides. But we watch the wolf boy. This Stark fights with honor and wins with cunning. Such men can be useful. "My sun and stars," Daenerys says carefully. "What do you mean?" "Wolves and horses do not hunt together," Drogo explains. "But they can hunt the same prey from different directions. The wolf boy bleeds the lions in the west. We bleed them in the south. Between us, the Lannister strength breaks." Jorah's eyes widen with understanding. A two-front war. The realm cannot defend everywhere at once. The realm cannot, Drogo agrees. But individual kingdoms can be conquered. First the Stormlands, then the Crownlands. Let the other kings exhaust themselves against each other. We will feast on what remains. Outside the tent, a horn sounds 3 long notes. The Khalasar prepares to move. 40,000 people who have lived their entire lives on horseback, ready to ride toward a destiny none of them can fully comprehend. Drogo rolls up the map of Westeros and secures it in a leather case. When next he sees these coastlines, It will be from the deck of a ship carrying the largest invasion force the Narrow Sea has ever known. "How long to Pentos?" he asks Jorah. 2 weeks if we push hard. 3 if we travel at normal pace." "We push hard," Drogo decides. "Every day we delay gives the realm time to unite against us. Every day we wait, the wolf boy grows stronger, and the lions learn from their defeats." He strides from the tent into the afternoon sun. His Khalasar spreads before him like a living sea of horses and riders. Women secure the last of their possessions. Men check weapons and harness. Children chase each other between the massive legs of war horses. "Kojako!" he calls. The captain approaches on horseback, his bells chiming softly in the wind. "Khal, send out riders to every horizon. I want to know of every army, every ship, every movement between here and the Narrow Sea. The crossing must be swift and secret." "It will be done." Drogo mounts his black stallion, feeling the familiar surge of power as the animal responds to his command. The wound on his chest pulls tight, but the pain is distant now. Soon it will be nothing but another scar, another mark of battles won. He raises his arak high above his head. Across the Khalasar, 40,000 voices rise in a war cry that shakes the earth. The sound carries across the grasslands like rolling thunder, a promise of violence and conquest that will soon echo across the waters of the Narrow Sea. The ride to Pentos begins. The ride toward Westeros begins, and in the distant north, a wolf boy king continues his war against the lions, never knowing that his greatest ally, or his most dangerous rival, approaches from across the water. Chapter 3. The Gathering Storm. The walls of Pentos rise like golden teeth against the morning sky. Illyrio Mopatis's manse sits at the city's heart, its towers draped in silk and shadow. Within its marble halls, the Magister of Pentos paces before a wall of ledgers, sweat beading on his perfumed brow despite the cool morning air. The Dothraki have come. 40,000 riders darken the grasslands beyond the city walls. Their horses churn the earth to mud. Their cook fires send smoke pillars into the sky like funeral pyres. The largest Khalasar in living memory has arrived at his gates, and their call demands ships. Illyrio's silk robes rustle as he turns to face the man who brought this news. Aggo sits cross-legged on a Persian carpet, his arak resting across his knees. The Dothraki blood rider looks like violence given form in this chamber of soft luxury. "Ships," Illyrio repeats, his voice carefully controlled. "Your Khal asks for ships." "Khal Drogo demands ships," Aggo corrects. "Enough to carry 40,000 warriors and their horses across the Narrow Sea. The dragon's husband will not be denied. And if I cannot provide such vessels?" Aggo's smile shows too many teeth. "Then Pentos burns, and we take the ships from your ashes." Through the tall windows, Illyrio can see the Dothraki host spreading across the plains. Riders circle the city walls like wolves around a sheepfold. Cook fires multiply by the hour. The Khalasar settles in for a siege that will not be a siege. It will be a feeding. "I will need time," the Magister says carefully, "to gather so many ships, to arrange provisions." "You have 3 days," Aggo interrupts. "After that, the Khal comes to speak with you personally." The Blood Rider rises and strides from the chamber, leaving Illyrio alone with his fears and his ledgers. 3 days to arrange the impossible. 3 days to move an army across the sea. He begins writing letters with shaking hands. In the Dothraki camp, Drogo stands over a table made from shields and spears. Maps of Westeros cover its surface, weighted down with Valyrian steel daggers. Jorah Mormont points to various coastal positions, while a dozen Chaos listen intently. Westerosi cavalry fights differently, Jorah explains in carefully pronounced Dothraki. They wear steel plates, carry long lances. They fight in formation, like a wall of iron. Kojako spits into the grass. Iron breaks. Men bleed. Men bleed, Jorah agrees. But Iron Knights have broken Dothraki charges before. At Qohor, 3,000 unsullied destroyed 50,000 riders. Drogo's scarred fingers trace the coastline of the Stormlands. He has heard the tales of Qohor, how spears and discipline turned Dothraki mobility into a weakness. But Qohor was a different battle, fought by different Khals against a different enemy. These Iron Knights, he says. How many? Perhaps 10,000 in all the realm, Jorah answers. But they are scattered among the armies of 5 kings. No single force has more than 2,000 or 3,000 heavy cavalry. And we have 40,000, Kopono observes. 40,000 who must learn to fight like Westerosi, Drogo corrects. The grass sea is wide and flat. Westeros has forests, rivers, mountains. Our horses must learn new ground. He calls to his blood riders. Kaholo, select 500 riders. Begin training them to fight on foot with shield and spear. If we must storm castle walls, we fight like infantry. Blood of my blood, Kaholo protests. Dothraki do not fight on foot. We are riders. We are whatever we must be to win, Drogo replies. His voice carries the edge that built this Khalasar from scattered tribes. The strong adapt, the weak die. Rakaro approaches with a leather satchel. Call, ravens from Mire, news from across the water. Drogo nods for him to speak. Renly Baratheon gathers his host at Highgarden. 100,000 men, perhaps more. The largest army in Westeros. And Stannis? Still on Dragonstone, but his fleet grows. Ships from the Eastern Lords, sellswords from across the narrow sea. They say he means to strike at King's Landing before summer's end. Drogo exchanges glances with Jorah. This is the opportunity they have waited for. Stannis attacking the capital, while Renly's massive army sits in the Reach, too far away to intervene. When? Drogo asks. The ravens speak of 2 moons, perhaps 3. Stannis gathers strength, but he will not wait forever. Perfect. Time enough to cross the water and establish a foothold before Stannis strikes. Time enough to position the Khalasar where it can exploit the chaos that follows. Send word to the Khaleesi, Drogo commands. Tell her the negotiations with the free cities must accelerate. We sail within the moon. In Illyrio's gardens, beneath flowering trees, heavy with evening perfume, Daenerys Targaryen receives merchants like a queen holding court. Her violet eyes study each face as they present their offers, her growing belly hidden beneath flowing silks. She speaks their language of gold and favors with increasing fluency. Weapons, she says to the Tyroshi armorer. Steel mail and half-helms for 10,000 men. The Dothraki favor speed over protection, but they must survive their first Westerosi battle. The price is steep, your grace, the man replies. Steel enough for an army. We'll be paid in Westerosi gold when we take their treasuries, Daenerys cuts him off. House Targaryen remembers its debts. House Targaryen rewards its friends. The armorer nods and makes notes on his ledger. Around the garden, other merchants conduct similar negotiations. Arrows by the tens of thousands, siege equipment, medical supplies, preserved food for the crossing. The logistics of invasion reduce to endless lists of iron and gold. A Lysene banker leans forward. Your Grace, we have also arranged intelligence networks. My colleagues in King's Landing report that Tyrion Lannister has been named Hand of the King. Daenerys' eyebrows rise. The imp? His father Tywin marches west to deal with the young wolf. The capital is defended by sellswords and city watch, perhaps 8,000 men, poorly trained and equipped. And Stannis knows this? His spies are as active as ours, Your Grace. The assault on King's Landing grows more likely with each passing day. Daenerys nods thoughtfully. A weak capital, a divided realm, enemies exhausted by months of war. The timing could not be more perfect if the gods themselves had arranged it. "What of ships?" she asks. The banker's smile is oily with greed. Magister Illyrio has contracted vessels from every free city, war galleys from Tyrosh, trading cogs from Pentos, even a few warships from Volantis. The crossing will be crowded, but possible. Possible, Your Grace. Expensive, but possible. Daenerys dismisses the merchants with promises and threats in equal measure. As the garden empties, she places her hand on her belly where her son grows. In the original timeline, this child would have died before drawing breath, twisted by blood magic into a monster. But there is no blood magic here, no desperate bargains with vengeful witches. Only the future king of Westeros, growing strong in his mother's womb. Jorah approaches through the flowering trees. "Khaleesi, your husband requests your presence. The final plans take shape." She follows him to where Drogo stands among his captains, the maps now covered with wooden tokens representing armies and fleets. The Khal has changed in the weeks since his recovery. The wound that should have killed him has instead sharpened his focus, hardened his resolve. "Moon of my life," he says as she approaches. The pieces move into position. His scarred finger points to wooden tokens scattered across the map. Renly's army sits here, in the Reach. Robb Stark raids here, in the Westerlands. Stannis prepares here, on Dragonstone, and we will land here, in the Stormlands. 4 armies converging on the center, Daenerys observes. 4 armies that expect to fight each other, Drogo corrects. None of them watching the horizon for horses. Jorah studies the positioning with a tactical eye. If Stannis attacks the capital while we hold the Stormlands, we can strike his rear as he besieges King's Landing. Caught between the city walls and our cavalry, his army breaks. And then? Then we take the capital while it burns, Drogo says simply. Cities fall quickly when their defenders are dead. The plan is audacious in its simplicity. Strike while the realm bleeds itself dry, exploit the chaos of civil war, claim the throne while pretenders fight over its shadow. It requires precise timing, flawless execution, and more luck than any general should expect. But looking at her husband's scarred face, at the confidence in his dark eyes, Daenerys believes it will work. The gods saved Khal Drogo for a purpose. Perhaps this is why. "The ships?" she asks. "Sail within the moon," Drogo confirms. "Illyrio has promised 200 vessels, enough for the crossing." "And if the weather turns?" "Then we die as Dothraki," Drogo says with a shrug. "But we will not die as slaves." Around them, the Khalasar prepares for the greatest journey in their people's history. Smiths forge new weapons in the Dothraki style. Women weave fresh nets for the transport of supplies. Children learn the sea songs that will carry them across the water. 40,000 souls preparing to cross the narrow sea. 40,000 who have lived their entire lives on horseback, about to trust their fate to wind and wave and the promise of foreign gold. In the distance, Pentos glows with torchlight as its magisters work through the night to arrange the impossible. Letters fly to every port, every shipyard, every captain who might sell his services for the right price. The gathering storm builds strength with each passing hour. Soon it will cross the water, and when it makes landfall in Westeros, the War of 5 Kings will become something altogether different. A war of survival. A war for the Iron Throne. A war that will end with dragons ascendant and wolves howling in victory. Or with the realm burning beneath the hooves of 40,000 horses. The choice belongs to the gods now. The Dothraki have made their decision. They ride for Westeros. Chapter 4. 40,000 horses. The harbour of Pentos stretches like a wooden city upon the water. 200 ships crowd the docks and anchorages, their masts rising like a forest of spears against the dawn sky. War galleys from Tyrosh bob beside trading cogs from Maya. Lycene warships anchor, next to converted merchant vessels, their holds gutted and rebuilt to carry horses instead of silk. The largest naval expedition in Dothraki history prepares to sail. Khal Drogo stands on the marble pier that juts into the harbour's heart. His scaled vest gleams in the morning light. His bronze bells chime softly in the sea breeze. Behind him, the greatest Khalasar ever assembled flows through Pentos like a river of horses and steel. 40,000, Jorah Mormont says, joining his Khal at the pier's edge. 40,000 warriors, their families, their horses, their slaves. The ships groan under the weight. Drogo watches a massive destrier being hoisted aboard a Tyroshi galley in a canvas sling. The animal kicks and screams as it swings through the air, its terror infectious among the other horses waiting on the docks. Getting Dothraki war horses aboard ship is like caging lightning, possible, but dangerous for everyone involved. They will learn, Drogo says simply. Horse and rider must trust each other, even on the water. Beyond the harbour mouth, storm clouds gather on the horizon. The crossing will not be easy. But then, nothing worth conquering ever is. A blood rider approaches at the gallop, his horse's hooves sparking on the cobblestones. Aggo vaults from his saddle before the animal stops moving, his face bright with news. "Blood of my blood," he calls. "Ravens from Dragonstone. Stannis Baratheon moves." Drogo turns from the harbour. When? Within days, his fleet masses in Blackwater Bay, ships from every corner of his kingdom. Tarth, Estamont, the lords of the Narrow Sea. They say he has 200 vessels. Against how many in King's Landing? Fewer than 50, Aggo grins. The Boy King's fleet was broken in storms. Their chain cannot hold against such numbers. Perfect timing. Drogo had planned to time the invasion with Stannis' assault, but the gods themselves seem to favour this convergence. While Stannis hammers the capital's gates, the Dothraki will land unopposed in the Stormlands. "Send word to Kojako," Drogo commands. "The advance ships sail with the evening tide. By dawn they must be scouting landing sites along the coast of Tarth." Aggo nods and mounts his horse again, wheeling away toward the main body of the Khalasar. Drogo turns back to the harbour, watching his people board ships that seem impossibly small for their numbers. The logistics are staggering. 40,000 warriors require 40,000 horses, and horses require space, fodder, fresh water. Each ship carries perhaps 200 riders and their mounts, cramped into holds that stink of fear and animal waste. The crossing will be a nightmare of organization and endurance. But it will be done. On the deck of the Maiden's Kiss, a converted Pentoshi trading vessel, Daenerys Targaryen watches her people struggle with the alien concept of the sea. Dothraki, who have spent their entire lives on horseback, now stand on planks of wood above unfathomable depths. Many refuse to look over the rails. Others clutch the rigging with white knuckles, their bronze skin pale with terror. "They fear the water," Jorah observes, joining her at the stern rail. "They fear what they cannot control," Daenerys corrects. "A Dothraki warrior can fight any man, any beast. But how do you fight the sea?" Below deck, horses whinny in distress as the ship rocks gently at anchor. The sound carries across the water from dozens of vessels, a chorus of animal anxiety that speaks to their riders' own fears. Dothraki and horses are one people. When the mounts suffer, so do the riders. "Will they fight when we reach Westeros?" Jorah asks. "They will fight," Daenerys says with certainty. "Dothraki may fear the water, but they do not fear death. And once they feel solid ground beneath their feet again, once they smell the grass of the 7 kingdoms, they will remember who they are." A commotion on the main deck draws their attention. Kopono argues with the Tiroshi captain, gesturing angrily at a pile of supplies. Even from this distance, Daenerys can see the problem. Not enough space for all the provisions the crossing requires. "The ships are overloaded," she observes. "Every vessel," Jorah agrees. "We're carrying twice the weight they were built for. If storms catch us in the narrow sea—" He doesn't finish the thought, but Daenerys understands. Overloaded ships in heavy weather become coffins. The greatest Khalasar in history could disappear beneath the waves before ever seeing Westeros. But the alternative is worse. Delay means losing the timing with Stannis' assault. Delay means arriving to find the realm united against them instead of tearing itself apart. The crossing must happen now, whatever the risk. "The gods saved my husband for this," she says quietly. "They will not let us drown within sight of our goal." As evening approaches, the ancient rituals begin. On the largest pier, Drogo's blood riders kindle a great fire of driftwood and horsehair. The flames leap high into the darkening sky, visible from every ship in the harbour. The Khalasar gathers as best it can. Those on the docks crowd close to the fire. Those already aboard ship-line the rails of their vessels. 40,000 voices prepare to rise as one. Drogo stands before the flames, his arak naked in his hands. The steel catches the firelight and throws it back like captured lightning. When he speaks, his voice carries across the water with the authority of a Khal who has never known defeat. "Horse lords," he calls in Dothraki, and the response echoes from ship to deck to pier. "Khal! We ride to war. War! Across the poison water, to the lands of the Iron Men. Iron! We ride for gold and glory. We ride for the Dragon Queen. We ride to make the 7 kingdoms bleed." The roar that answers him shakes the harbour. Horses rear and scream, ships' timbers groan. The very water seems to tremble with the force of 40,000 voices raised in bloodthirsty harmony. Drogo raises his arak high above his head and brings it down in a slashing arc. The blade bites deep into a wooden post driven into the pier for this purpose. The wood splits with a crack like thunder, and half the post topples into the water. "Thus fall the enemies of the Khaleesi," he roars. "Thus fall the enemies of the Khaleesi," the Khalasar roars back. The ritual complete, boarding resumes with new urgency. The evening tide approaches, and the first ships must be away before full dark. Kojako's advance squadron, 20 of the fastest vessels carrying his best riders, will cross in darkness and scout the Westerosi coast, while the main force follows behind. The first storm hits 3 days out from Pentos. The Maiden's Kiss rides the swells like a mad horse, her timbers groaning with each impact. In her hold, Dothraki warriors lie retching in their own vomit, while their horses scream and kick in terror. The stench is overwhelming. Fear, sickness, animal waste, all trapped in the airless space below deck. On the weather deck, Daenerys grips the port rail and watches green water sweep across the planking. Spray lashes her face, salt and cold in equal measure. Around her, sailors work with desperate efficiency to keep the ship afloat. "Too much weight," the Tiroshi captain shouts over the wind. "She rides too low in the water." "Then lighten her," Jorah shouts back. "How? We cannot throw away horses." The captain has a point. Each horse represents a warrior's bond partner, his strength in battle, his status in the Khalasar. To lose horses to the sea would be like losing weapons or honor, unthinkable for a Dothraki. But as the ship labors through another massive swell, Daenerys begins to wonder if the choice might be taken from them. Around the fleet, other vessels struggle with the same problem. Ships built to carry grain and silk now carry war horses and warriors, loaded beyond their safe limits. Lightning splits the sky, and in its brief illumination, she sees the fleet spread across miles of angry water. Some ships ride the storm better than others. A few lag behind, their captains fighting to keep their overloaded vessels on course. There, Jorah points through the rain and spray. One of ours is in trouble. A Myrish cog wallows in a deep trough between two waves, her masts bare of sail, her deck awash. Even as they watch, she heels over at a dangerous angle, before struggling back upright. "Signal them!" The Tiroshi captain orders his crew. Lanterns flash across the water, maritime language that transcends borders. The cog responds with her own lights, brief and desperate. Her message is clear. Taking on water cannot maintain course, require assistance. But in these seas, with these winds, assistance is impossible. Each ship must fight its own battle against the storm. The fleet can only sail on and hope the cog's crew can keep her afloat until calmer waters. By dawn, the storm passes. The fleet emerges battered, but intact into rolling seas under clearing skies. 37 ships remain visible on the horizon, down from the original 41 that left with the advance force. 4 vessels lost to the sea. 400 warriors and their horses gone beneath the waves. The price of crossing has been paid in Dothraki blood. On the 7th day, Jaco's advance scouts return with momentous news. Their fastest galley approaches the main fleet, flying victory banners, her bronze ram cutting through the water like a weapon seeking targets. The scout ship comes alongside the Maiden's Kiss, and Jaco himself climbs aboard, using rope and grappling hooks. His armor is still damp with sea spray, his bells silent with salt water, but his eyes burn with triumph. "Carl," he calls to Drogo, "the coast is ours." "Speak!" Landed at Tarth 3 days past. Small garrison, easily overrun. The island is secured. Fresh water, good anchorage, and better. Intelligence from captured prisoners. What intelligence? Stannis struck King's Landing 5 days ago. The battle rages still. Tyrion Lannister commands the defense, but his strength breaks. The capital burns. Drogo's eyes narrow. Stannis wins? Unknown, Jaco admits. But both sides bleed. The City Watch fights on the walls while Stannis' men storm the Mudgate. Perfect chaos for our purposes. Perfect indeed. While the realm's attention focuses on the battle for King's Landing, the Dothraki establish their foothold unopposed. By the time either side realizes the invasion has begun, 40,000 horses will be watering in Westerosi streams. "The landing sites?" Drogo asks. "Prepared. Wide beaches, paths inland already scouted. We can begin disembarking within hours of arrival." Drogo turns to study the western horizon, where Westeros waits beyond the curve of the earth. 7 kingdoms that have never known the thunder of Dothraki hooves. 7 kingdoms that will soon learn what it means to face the Horse Lords in their full strength. "Signal the fleet," he commands. All ships make best speed for Tarth. The Dragon Queen comes home. The horns sound across the water, their bronze voices carrying the message from ship to ship. Sails unfurl to catch the favorable wind. The great fleet turns toward Westeros like an arrow loosed from a god's bow. Behind them, the waters of the narrow sea close over the wakes of their passage. Ahead, destiny waits on foreign shores. 40,000 horses ride toward war. Chapter 5. Landfall in the Stormlands. The beaches of Tarth stretch white as bone beneath the morning sun. Waves break against the shore in endless rhythm, carrying the first Dothraki longboats toward destiny. Khal Drogo stands in the bow of the lead vessel, his boots braced against the wooden planking, his arak naked in his hands. Behind him, 200 ships darken the horizon. The boat's keel grinds against sand and stones. Dothraki warriors leap into the surf before the vessel stops moving, their horses plunging into the shallow water, with snorts of relief. After days of confinement in the ship's holds, both riders and mounts hunger for solid ground. Drogo's stallion splashes through the waves, its hooves finding purchase on the foreign shore. The Khal raises his weapon high above his head and releases a war cry that echoes across the water. From ship to ship, 40,000 voices answer him. The sound rolls inland like thunder, carrying news of invasion to every village and hold fast in the Stormlands. The Dragon Queen has come home. Kojako rides up the beach at a gallop, his horse's hooves throwing spray from the retreating tide. "Khal, the island is secure. No resistance since the initial landing." Prisoners, a dozen men from the garrison. They speak of great battles across the water. The pretender kings tear at each other's throats. Perfect. While Westeros bleeds itself dry, the Dothraki establish their beachhead unopposed. Drogo turns his stallion toward the tree line, where his advance scouts wait among the pines. Time to see what manner of land he has come to conquer. The village of Blackhaven sits in a valley 2 leagues inland from the beach. Smoke rises from its chimneys in peaceful spirals, and children chase chickens through the muddy streets. The villagers go about their morning tasks with no knowledge that 40,000 Dothraki horses thunder toward them across the hills. Sir Duncan Caron commands the small garrison at Blackhaven's wooden palisade. 12 men-at-arms, a handful of crossbows, and walls that would not stop a determined merchant, much less a Dothraki horde. When the horns of his sentries blow 3 sharp blasts, he knows his duty. He also knows he is going to die. "Bar the gates!" he shouts to his men. "Send ravens to Storm's End and King's Landing. Tell them—" The words die in his throat as the first Dothraki riders crest the ridge above the village. They pour down the hillside like a brown tide, their war cries splitting the morning air. Hundreds of them, then thousands, their horses moving with the fluid grace of predators scenting prey. Duncan draws his sword, knowing the gesture is meaningless. Behind him, his men-at-arms huddle against the palisade walls, their faces pale with terror. They have heard stories of the horse lords, tales of cities burned and populations enslaved. Now the stories ride toward them, with bronze bells and curved steel. The Dothraki do not attack the walls. Instead, they flow around the village like water around a stone, encircling it completely. Their horses dance and rear just outside crossbow range, their riders whooping and shouting in their harsh tongue. Then Khal Drogo himself rides forward. Duncan has seen great lords before. Robert Baratheon in his prime, Tywin Lannister in his golden mail. But this scarred savage radiates a different kind of power. The authority of a man who has killed with his own hands, who has led warriors through 100 battles and never known defeat. "Yield," Drogo calls in accented common tongue. "Open your gates, and you live." Duncan's sword trembles in his grip. Around the palisade, 10,000 Dothraki wait for his answer. He thinks of his wife in Storm's End, his young son who dreams of knighthood. He thinks of duty and honor and the oaths he swore to House Baratheon. "I am sworn to Lord Renly," he calls back. "I cannot yield to foreign invaders." Drogo nods as if he expected this answer. He raises his arak and brings it down in a sharp gesture. Around the village, Dothraki riders notch arrows to their bows. The volley falls like deadly rain. Duncan dies with 3 arrows in his chest, still gripping his useless sword. His men-at-arms last perhaps 10 seconds longer before the second volley cuts them down. The gates burn within the hour. News of Black Haven's fall spreads across the Stormlands faster than wildfire. Refugees stream along the coastal roads, carrying tales of horror that grow with each telling. 40,000 Dothraki, 100,000. Demons on horseback who drink blood and eat human flesh. Lord Elwood Meadows of Grassy Vale receives the reports in his solar, his hands shaking as he reads the ravens. The words make no sense. Dothraki, in the Stormlands? It has to be a mistake, some confusion born of battle shock and fear. But the reports keep coming. Black Haven burned. The garrison at Crow's Nest slaughtered. Strange ships landing troops by the thousands along the coast. And always the same description. Bronze-skinned riders with bells in their hair, speaking a foreign tongue and showing no mercy. "My lord," his maester says quietly, "perhaps we should evacuate to Storm's End." Elwood stares out his solar window at the green fields of his domain. 3 generations of Meadows have held these lands. His grandfather died defending them against Robert's hammer during the rebellion. His father expanded them through careful marriage and shrewd politics. Now foreign savages will burn it all. "Gather the small folk," he orders. "Everyone who can walk. We ride for Storm's End within the hour." But Storm's End is under siege, and the roads between are crowded with other refugees. The Stormlands empty themselves into the few remaining strongholds, carrying nothing but terror and tales of mounted demons from across the sea. Khal Drogo stands atop the captured tower of Grassy Vale, studying the maps his captives have provided. The Stormlands spread before him like an open book. Every road, every castle, every strategic position marked in careful detail by generations of Westerosi mapmakers. "They flee," Kopono reports from the courtyard below. "Every village between here and Storm's End empties itself. The roads choke with small folk carrying their lives on their backs." "Good," Drogo replies. "Fear travels faster than horses. By the time we reach their great castles, half the defenders will have fled." This is psychological warfare, as the Dothraki understand it. Break the enemy's will before engaging their strength. Make them afraid of your very name, and battles win themselves. Jorah Mormont climbs the tower stairs, his face grim with news. "Call, riders from the landing beaches. They bring word from across the water. Speak. The battle for King's Landing is ended. Stannis Baratheon's fleet lies broken in Blackwater Bay. His army retreats to Dragonstone, shattered and defeated." Drogo's eyes narrow. "And the Boy King?" "Lives. Tyrion Lannister held the walls. They say Tywin Lannister arrived with a new army at the battle's end, crushing Stannis between hammer and anvil." Interesting. Not the outcome Drogo had hoped for, but perhaps even better. A close battle leaves both sides wounded. Stannis retains some strength, but not enough to threaten the capital again. The Boy King holds his throne, but at terrible cost. What of Renly's army? Still in the Reach, but reports say they march north. News of our landing has reached them. Drogo studies the map, calculating distances and time frames. Renly's host is the largest in Westeros, but it is also the farthest from the action. Even marching hard, they cannot reach the Crownlands for weeks. And the young wolf? Unknown. His last reported position was in the Westerlands, raiding Lannister gold mines. He may not even know of our invasion yet. Perfect. The realm's strongest armies are scattered across 1,000 miles, each focused on their own campaigns. The Dothraki have achieved the greatest prize in warfare, strategic surprise. "Summon the Khos," Drogo commands. "We march for King's Landing at dawn." The captains gather in the hall below, their bronze bells chiming softly as they move. Maps spread across tables looted from the Lord's chambers. Markers show the positions of armies, the locations of strongholds, the routes of their advance. The capital sits wounded. Drogo addresses them in Dothraki. Stannis bled it, but could not take it. Now we finish what the Pretender began. Kojako leans over the map. 3 days hard riding, blood of my blood. But the roads will be watched. "Let them watch," Drogo replies. "I want them to see us coming. I want every man on those walls to know the horse lords ride against them." He traces a finger along the King's Road, the great highway that connects the capital to the Stormlands. Normally, such a route would be suicide for an invading army. Too predictable, too easily defended. But these are not normal times. The Lannisters are exhausted from defending against Stannis. Half their strength is scattered across the realm fighting other wars. They cannot spare men to hold every bridge and crossroads. "And if they try to stop us?" Kopono asks. "Then we go around them," Drogo says simply. "We are Dothraki. We do not fight where our enemies are strongest. We strike where they are weakest." Outside the hall, the night fills with the sounds of preparation. Armorers sharpen araks and arrowheads. Horse handlers check saddles and bridles. Riders gather their gear for the greatest raid in their people's history. 40,000 Dothraki preparing to descend on the heart of Westeros. By dawn, the horde moves. They flow across the Stormlands like a tide of bronze and leather, leaving only ash and emptiness in their wake. Villages burn not from malice, but from practicality. Smoke visible for miles tells every Westerosi that the horse lords have passed this way. The psychological effect is devastating. Ravens fly from every holdfast still standing, carrying news of the invasion to lords who can scarcely believe what they read. Dothraki in Westeros. Impossible. But the reports keep coming, each one more dire than the last. At Storm's End, Sir Courtenay Penrose reads the latest dispatches with growing horror. His castle sits under siege by Stannis' brother, but that threat pales beside this new development. Renly's crown means nothing if foreign savages burn the realm around him. "How many?" he asks his maester. "The reports vary, my lord. 40,000, perhaps more. They move fast, striking without warning." Courtenay stares at the map spread before him. Red markers show known Dothraki positions, a line of destruction cutting north from the coast toward the King's Road. At this rate, they will reach the capital's outskirts within days. "Send ravens to Lord Renly," he orders. "Tell him the realm itself is at stake. Tell him to abandon whatever campaign he pursues and march north with all speed." But ravens fly slowly, and armies march slower still. By the time Renly receives word and can respond, the horse lords will already be at the gates of King's Landing. The race for the Iron Throne has become a race against time itself. On the second day of the march, Drogo's outriders bring word of the first organized resistance. Lord Donald Swan has gathered the remnants of several garrisons at a crossroads called Sow's Horn. Perhaps 500 men behind wooden stakes and earthworks, positioned to block the King's Road. A nuisance, nothing more. The Dothraki do not attack the roadblock. Instead, they flow around it like water around stone, crossing the countryside in a dozen parallel columns. By evening, Lord Swan and his men find themselves surrounded, cut off from retreat or reinforcement. The white banner of surrender flies from their improvised fort before midnight. This becomes the pattern of the advance. Where Westerosi commanders expect conventional siege warfare or pitched battles, they find themselves facing an enemy that refuses to fight on their terms. The Dothraki are everywhere and nowhere, striking fast and disappearing before organized counterattacks can form. It is warfare as the Horse Lords understand it, mobility over mass, speed over strength, terror over tactics. By the third day, refugees from the advance clog every road leading to King's Landing. They carry stories that freeze blood in noble veins, tales of horse warriors who appear from nowhere, strike like lightning, and vanish like smoke. Tales of villages burned and garrisons scattered, of an army that moves faster than ravens can fly. Tales of the Dragon Queen returning to claim her birthright, and the 40,000 horses that carry her vengeance. The Stormlands burn behind them, but ahead lies the prize they have crossed an ocean to claim. The capital of the Seven Kingdoms sits before them, wounded and weary from its recent battle. King's Landing awaits the coming of the Horse Lords. Chapter 6. The King's Road burns. The Red Keep's throne room still stinks of wildfire and death when the Raven arrives. Lord Tywin Lannister stands before the Iron Throne, his golden armor scorched from the recent battle, his lined face grim as he reads the message that will change everything. Beside him, Tyrion shifts his weight on his crutches, favoring the leg wounded in the defense of King's Landing. The imp's eyes dart between his father's expression and the parchment in his hands, reading disaster in both. "What news?" Tyrion asks, though he suspects he already knows. "Dothraki," Tywin says simply. 40,000 of them, landed in the Stormlands, 3 days past. The words hang in the air like a curse. Around the throne room, lords and courtiers exchange glances of disbelief. Dothraki and Westeros? It cannot be possible. But Tywin Lannister is not a man given to flights of fancy. "How?" Tyrion demands. "How did 40,000 savages cross the narrow sea without anyone knowing? While we bled ourselves dry against Stannis, apparently." Tywin's voice carries the weight of a man who has just realized his greatest victory may have been his greatest mistake. They landed unopposed while every eye in the realm watched our walls burn. He crumples the Raven Scroll in his gauntleted fist. Around him, the political calculations that have defined his life crumble like sand. The War of 5 Kings has become something else entirely. A war for survival itself. "Where are they now?" asks Grand Maester Pycelle, his voice quavering with age and terror. "Here." Tywin spreads a map across the base of the Iron Throne. "And here. And here." His finger traces a path of destruction that cuts through the Stormlands like a festering wound. They move fast, avoiding our strongholds, burning everything they cannot hold. "Like Dothraki," Tyrion observes. "They raid, they don't conquer." "These ones conquer," Tywin corrects grimly. "Storm's End fell yesterday." The siege of Storm's End lasts exactly 6 hours. Sir Courtenay Penrose watches from the castle's highest tower as the Dothraki horde flows around his walls like a tide of bronze and steel. 40,000 riders, their horses dancing just beyond crossbow range, their war cries echoing off the ancient stones. He has 300 men. 300 against 40,000. The mathematics of disaster could not be clearer. "They're savages," Ser Robar Royce says, gripping his sword hilt with white knuckles. "They know nothing of siegecraft. These walls have stood for centuries." But Courtenay has studied the reports from the fallen villages. The Dothraki may be savages, but they learn quickly. Already he can see them bringing forward strange devices, wheeled platforms, scaling ladders, bundles of straw soaked in oil. They don't need to break the walls, he realizes. They just need to get over them. The first assault comes with the setting sun, not the disciplined advance of Westerosi men-at-arms, but a screaming wave of horse warriors flowing up makeshift ramps like water, finding its level. Arrows darken the sky. Grappling hooks bite into stone. Torches arc through the air to land in the bailey, spreading fire wherever they fall. Courtenay's crossbowmen shoot as fast as they can span their strings, but for every Dothraki they drop, 3 more take his place. The horse lords fight with the desperate fury of men who have crossed an ocean to claim their prize, and they will not be denied by stone walls and Westerosi steel. The gates burn first, not broken, but consumed by the oil-fed flames the Dothraki fling against them. Then the walls sprout bronze-skinned warriors like lethal flowers, their curved swords glinting in the firelight as they cut down the defenders. By midnight, the dragon banner of House Targaryen flies above Storm's End. In the Reach, Lord Renly Baratheon receives the news of his ancestral seat's fall with the stunned silence of a man watching his world collapse. He sits in his pavilion outside Highgarden, surrounded by the banners of 100,000 men, reading ravens that tell of disasters beyond imagination. Storm's End, he whispers. They took Storm's End. Sir Loras Tyrell paces before the map table like a caged wolf. How is it possible? Those walls have never fallen to assault. Never. They fell to dragons once, observes Lord Randall Tarley, his voice flat with military pragmatism. Perhaps they have fallen to dragons again. These are not dragons, Renly snaps. These are horse-riding savages from across the sea. Horse-riding savages who just captured the strongest fortress in the Stormlands, Tarley replies. Your Grace, we must consider our position carefully. 40,000 fresh warriors have entered the realm while our enemies exhaust themselves with civil war. Renly stares at the map spread before him. Red markers show Dothraki positions, cutting a bloody swath from the coast toward the capital. His own forces sit here in the Reach, strong but distant. By the time he can march to King's Landing, the horse lords will already be at the gates. What do we know of their leader? He asks. Khal Drogo, reads Maester Balabar from his notes. Husband to Daenerys Targaryen, last daughter of the Mad King. The reports say he is the strongest of the Dothraki Khals, never defeated in battle. And he fights for Targaryen restoration, Lord Caswell observes, the same cause that drove Viserys to madness. But with 40,000 swords behind it, Tarley adds grimly, Your Grace, we face a choice. March north to defend King's Landing and the boy king who killed your brother, or... He doesn't finish the sentence, but every man in the pavilion understands. Or join the winning side. Or consider whether the return of dragons might not be preferable to the continued rule of bastards and murderers. You counsel treason, Renly says quietly. I counsel survival, Tarley replies. The Lannisters are weakened. Stannis is defeated. The Starks are trapped in the west. The realm tears itself apart, while fresh enemies land on our shores. Perhaps it is time to consider new alliances. On the King's Road south of the capital, the refugee streams merge into a flood of human misery. Thousands of small folk flee north with whatever they can carry, driven by tales of horse warriors who burn villages and take slaves. Lord Gunser Sunglass commands the rearguard of this exodus, trying to maintain some semblance of order among the panic-stricken crowds. His handful of men-at-arms work desperately to prevent the road from becoming a deadly crush of bodies. My lord, a rider approaches at the gallop, his horse lathered with sweat. The Dothraki, they're coming up the road. Gunser feels his heart sink. He has perhaps 50 men, mostly guards and retainers, Behind him, 3,000 refugees, farmers, craftsmen, children, the elderly, who cannot outrun horses. "How far?" he asks. "Perhaps an hour, my lord." Maybe less. No time to organize a defense. No time to do anything but pray to the Seven and hope for a quick death. But when the Dothraki appear on the horizon, they do something unexpected. They stop. The horde spreads across the road like a dark tide, but they make no move to attack the refugee column. Instead, a single rider advances under a banner of parley, the three-headed dragon of House Targaryen, rippling in the wind. Khal Drogo himself rides forward. The Dothraki leader studies the refugee column with calculating eyes. These are not soldiers to be defeated or lords to be broken. These are small folk, the foundation upon which all kingdoms rest. "You flee," he says, in accented common tongue. "Aye," Gunsa replies, his voice steadier than he feels. "We flee from you and yours. Good. Tell them in the city what you have seen. Tell them the Dragon Queen comes to reclaim her birthright. Tell them resistance brings only death." And with that, the Khal wheels his horse and rides back to his host. The Dothraki part like a curtain, allowing the refugees to pass unmolested. But the message is clear. We could have slaughtered you all, but we chose mercy. Remember that when you reach the capital. By nightfall, 3,000 terrified voices carry news of the coming storm into King's Landing itself. In the dungeons beneath Storm's End, Khal Drogo examines his prize. Lord Edric Storm sits chained to the wall, bastard son of the dead king, his young face defiant despite his circumstances. "You are Robert's blood," Drogo says, studying the boy's features. "Bastard blood," Edric replies, "worth nothing to anyone." "All blood has worth," Drogo corrects. "Your father broke the Dragon Kings. Now the Dragon Queen returns. Perhaps there is justice in this." Beside him, Jorah Mormont translates as needed, helping the Khal navigate the complexities of Westerosi politics through interrogation. They have taken a dozen prisoners, minor lords, knights, sworn swords, and each one teaches them something new about this strange realm they have come to conquer. "Tell me of the boy king," Drogo commands Lord Penrose. "Joffrey?" Courtenay spits blood from his split lip. Mad as his grandfather, cruel as his mother, the realm suffers under his rule. And his armies? Weakened by the battle with Stannis. Half his men are sellswords and pressed criminals. They will break at the first charge. This matches the intelligence Drogo has gathered from other sources. King's Landing sits wounded, its defenders demoralized, its people terrified, the perfect target for the final assault. "What of the other claimants?" Drogo asks. Stannis licks his wounds on Dragonstone. Robb Stark raids gold mines in the west. Balon Greyjoy plays pirate in the north. Courtenay's voice grows weary. "The realm bleeds from a dozen wounds, and now you come to finish what we started." "I come to finish what was started long ago," Drogo corrects. "When your Robert broke the Dragon Prince's chest, he began a debt. Now that debt comes due." Outside the dungeon, his Khalasar prepares for the final advance. 40,000 riders who have tasted victory and hunger for more. The greatest prize in Westeros lies just days ahead, the Iron Throne itself, seat of 7 kingdoms, symbol of power absolute. But first, they must take it from those who stole it. In King's Landing, the bells ring through the night. Not victory bells or wedding bells, but the deep bronze tolling of alarm that speaks of disasters beyond measure. The city's defenders work frantically to repair the damage from Stannis' assault, but everyone knows the truth. They are not preparing to defend against another siege. They are preparing to die. Lord Tywin Lannister stands on the battlements of the Red Keep, watching the southern approaches where smoke columns mark the Dothraki advance. Beside him, his son Tyrion grips his walking stick with white knuckles. "How long?" Tyrion asks. 2 days, Tywin replies. "Perhaps less if they force the pace." "And our chances?" Tywin is silent for a long moment, studying the horizon where his doom approaches on 40,000 horses. He has fought wars for 40 years, won victories that men will sing of for centuries, but he has never faced anything like this. "We prepare for siege," he says finally, "and we pray the other claimants arrive before we fall." But both men know the truth. The other claimants are too far away, too weakened by their own battles. King's Landing stands alone against the storm from across the sea. The Dragon Queen comes home, and the realm will burn before her. In the distance, smoke rises from a dozen villages. The King's Road burns, just as the realm itself burns. And still the Dothraki come, flowing north like destiny given form in bronze and steel. The capital waits. The final battle approaches, and the fate of the Seven Kingdoms rides with 40,000 horses whose hoofbeats shake the very earth. Chapter 7. When Dragons Dream of Wolves. The War Council meets in the ruins of Oxcross, among the charred remains of what was once a Lannister stronghold. Robb Stark sits at a table, made from a castle gate, torn from its hinges, his crown of iron and bronze catching the firelight. Around him, his bannermen study maps, stained with ash and blood. The young wolf has been winning. For weeks, his forces have carved through the Westerlands like a blade through silk, burning mines, capturing supply trains, turning Tywin Lannister's gold into smoke and memory. Victory has a taste, and it lingers on every tongue in the room, until the ravens arrive. Maester Wyman breaks the seal with shaking fingers, reading the message once, twice, 3 times before he trusts his eyes. When he looks up, his face has gone pale as parchment. "Your Grace," he says quietly. News from the Stormlands. Grave news. The conversation around the table dies. Lords Karstark and Umber lean forward. Sir Wendell Manderley sets down his wine cup. Even the Greatjon falls silent, his massive frame suddenly still as stone. "Speak," Robb commands. 40,000 Dothraki have landed near Tarth. They move toward King's Landing, burning everything in their path. Storm's End has fallen. The words hang in the air like a curse. Storm's End. The fortress that had withstood Robert's hammer for a full year during the rebellion, taken by horse-riding savages in a single day. Lord Rickard Karstark spits into the fire. "Impossible. Dothraki don't have ships." "Someone gave them ships," Rose Bolton observes from his place at the table's far end. His pale eyes study the Raven scroll with calculating interest. "The question is who?" Maester Wyman clears his throat. "The message speaks of a dragon queen, Your Grace. Daenerys Targaryen, sister to the Beggar King. They say she leads them." "Leads Dothraki?" The Greatjon laughs, but there's no humor in it. A slip of a girl leading horse lords? What sort of madness is this? "The profitable sort, if it's true," mutters Lord Glover. 40,000 fresh swords entering the realm while we exhaust ourselves with civil war. Robb stares at the map spread before him, calculating distances and time frames. His finger traces the route from Tarth to King's Landing. 3 days hard riding, perhaps less for mounted warriors who know no other life. They'll reach the capital before us, he realizes. If they mean to take it, Bolton adds. Dothraki raid and retreat. They don't hold ground. "These ones might," Robb says slowly. "If they truly fight for Targaryen restoration, they have reason to hold what they take." The implications settle over the War Council like a shroud. Another claimant to the Iron Throne, backed by the largest army any of them have ever heard of. The game has changed entirely. In her pavilion beside the ruins, Catelyn Stark reads the same reports with growing dread. She remembers her father's stories of the Mad King's court, the tales that filtered north of Aerys Targaryen's descent into madness and cruelty. Dragons may be gone, but Targaryen blood still carries fire and death. Robb enters without ceremony, his young face heavy with the weight of impossible decisions. At 17, he commands 30,000 men and the loyalty of half the North. Now he must choose whether to fight or ally with forces that could reshape the realm. "What do you counsel, Mother?" he asks. "Caution," she replies immediately. The blood of the dragon runs hot. Aerys burned men alive for sport. His son kidnapped your aunt and started a war that killed thousands. Can we trust his daughter to be different? She's married to a Dothraki Carl, Robb points out. That suggests she's practical. It suggests she's desperate, Catelyn corrects. Desperate enough to wed a barbarian for soldiers. What will she do when she has the throne? What price will she demand from those who helped her claim it? Robb moves to the tent's entrance, looking out at his army's campfires. 30,000 Northmen and Riverlords who have followed him through victory after victory. Good men who deserve a king who makes wise choices. The alternative is facing 40,000 Dothraki as enemies, he says quietly. Better enemies we can see than allies who may turn on us, Catelyn replies. Your father always said that honor was its own reward. Perhaps this is a test of that belief. But even as she speaks, Catelyn knows the choice isn't that simple. War has its own logic, and that logic whispers that 40,000 horses could end the Lannister threat forever. At River Run, Sir Edmure Tully receives the news with the enthusiasm of a man who has spent months watching his lands burn while politics tie his hands. He paces the battlements of his ancestral seat, his auburn hair whipping in the wind as he studies reports from across the realm. 40,000, he says to his council. 40,000 fresh warriors who hate the Lannisters as much as we do. They're savages, warns Sir Desmond Grell. Rapists and slavers who know nothing of honor. So are the Lannisters, Edmure replies sharply. At least these savages fight for the right cause. He spreads the map of the Riverlands before him, marking the burned villages, the slaughtered small folk, the systematic destruction Tywin Lannister has wrought on his people. Every red mark represents dozens of innocents dead for the crime of supporting Robb Stark. The Lannisters have been burning my lands for months, Edmure continues. They've murdered more Riverland small folk than the Dothraki ever could. If Targaryen restoration means an end to Lannister tyranny, perhaps we should welcome it. And if the Dragon Queen proves as mad as her father, asks Maester Wyman, then we deal with that when it happens, Edmure says with the impatience of youth. But right now, today, she's the enemy of our enemies. That makes her potentially valuable. He calls for ravens and fresh parchment. If his nephew means to consider this alliance, someone should reach out to these Dothraki before they burn down the capital and everyone in it. In his private quarters above the ruins of Oxcross, Rose Bolton writes letters by candlelight. His pale fingers move with careful precision, crafting words that will either secure his family's future or damn it entirely. The first letter goes to his son Ramsay at the Dreadfort, instructions to ready their forces for rapid movement, to prepare for possibilities that other men dare not consider. The second goes to agents in King's Landing, men who trade in information and influence, who might carry words to the right ears. The third letter is the most delicate. Written in the trade tongue of the free cities, it seeks contact with the Dragon Queen's advisors. Nothing treasonous. Nothing that could be construed as betrayal of his king. Simply overtures, inquiries. The careful probing of a man who understands that loyalty is a luxury only the strong can afford. Rose seals the letters with plain wax, no sigil to identify their source. If discovered, they could belong to anyone. If successful, they open doors that might lead the Bolton name to greater heights than it has ever known. He has served the Starks for generations, but service only goes so far. When the realm reshapes itself, the wise man positions himself to benefit from the change. The formal war council reconvenes at dawn. Robb sits at the head of the table, his decision weighing heavy on young shoulders. Around him, his lords argue with the passion of men whose choices will echo through history. "We should march on King's Landing immediately," declares Lord Karstark. "Strike while the Lannisters are weakened from Stannis' assault. And fight 40,000 Dothraki for the right to storm the gates?" The Great Jon shakes his massive head. "That's a sure path to defeat." "Not if we coordinate our attack," suggests Ser Stevron Frey. "Hit the city from two sides while the defenders are trapped between hammer and anvil." "Assuming the Dothraki want our help," Bolton observes. "They may prefer to take the capital themselves. Horse lords don't share glory willingly." Robb listens to the debate, weighing each argument against the others. The reports from the south paint a clear picture. King's Landing weakened, Stannis defeated, the Stormlands in chaos. Perfect conditions for conquest, if only they could reach the capital in time. But time is the one thing they lack. Even marching hard, his army cannot reach King's Landing before the Dothraki do. The Horse Lords move fast while his forces carry the weight of siege equipment and supply trains. "There is another option," he says finally, and the table falls silent. "We could offer alliance." "Alliance with savages?" Lord Karstark's voice carries disgust. "Alliance with 40,000 swords that hate our enemies," Robb corrects. "The Targaryens have as much right to the throne as the Baratheons. More, if you believe in true succession. Your father died opposing Targaryen rule," Catelyn says quietly from her place beside him. "My father died because a mad king threatened his family," Robb replies. "This is a different Targaryen, facing different circumstances." He stands and moves to the great map that covers one wall of their makeshift council chamber. Red markers show Lannister positions, blue shows his own forces. Now he places a new marker, gold for the Dragon Queen, cutting toward the heart of the realm like a spear thrust. "Look at the positions," he says. "Tywin sits in King's Landing, with perhaps 15,000 men, exhausted from defending against Stannis. We have 30,000 in the west. The Dothraki have 40,000 moving from the south. Between us, we can crush Lannister power forever." "And then?" asks the Great Jon. "Then we negotiate," Robb says simply. "The Dragon Queen wants the Iron Throne. We want northern independence and justice for our dead. Perhaps we can both have what we seek." The logic is compelling, but logic wars with instinct around the table. These men have grown up on stories of Targaryen madness, of dragons and wildfire, and kings who burned their own subjects for sport. "I say we offer parley," declares Edmure, speaking for the first time. "Send envoys under banners of truce. Learn what manner of queen this Daenerys truly is before we decide to fight or ally with her." "And if she's as mad as her father?" Catelyn presses. "Then we kill her and take her army," the Great Jon says with brutal simplicity. 40,000 Dothraki without a leader become 40,000 sellswords looking for employment. Robb considers this for a long moment. The proposal has merit, but enormous risk. To meet with the Dragon Queen, is to put himself within reach of foreign warriors who owe him no loyalty. To refuse is to face them as enemies when they might have been allies. We send a letter first, he decides, offering formal parley between the king in the north and the queen of the Andals and the first men. If she agrees to meet under banners of truce, we consider it. If not, we prepare for war. "And who writes this letter?" Bolton asks. "I do," Robb says. "One king to another. Let her know that the North remembers its friends and its enemies." The decision made, ravens are prepared and messages crafted. Words that will either forge the most unlikely alliance in Westerosi history or set the stage for a clash between ice and fire that will reshape the realm forever. Outside the ruined castle, 30,000 northern wolves prepare for whatever comes next. To the south, 40,000 horses thunder toward the capital, and somewhere between them, the fate of the 7 kingdoms hangs on the words of 2 young monarchs who have never met, but whose choices will echo through generations. The young wolf reaches for his quill, composing words that may save or damn them all. The letter that will determine whether dragons and wolves hunt together or tear each other apart in the struggle for a throne built from the swords of the conquered. History waits on the stroke of a pen. Chapter 8. The Council of Carls and Kings. Harrenhal rises from the morning mist like a monument to ambition gone wrong. Its twisted towers and melted stone speak of dragon's fire and kings who reached too high. Now it serves as neutral ground for a meeting that will either forge the most unlikely alliance in Westerosi history or set the stage for even greater destruction. 2 armies face each other across the ruins of Harren's Great Hall. To the north, 30,000 wolves and trouts under the banners of the young wolf. To the south, 40,000 Dothraki horse lords, whose bronze bells chime like death knells in the wind. Between them, a single pavilion of white silk marks the place where kings will decide the fate of nations. Khal Drogo dismounts from his black stallion, his boots crunching on stones that have lain broken since Aegon's conquest. His blood riders flank him, Koholo, Aggo, Rakaro, their hands resting on their araks, but not drawing steel. The protocols of parley hold, even between cultures that share no common tongue save violence. Across the courtyard, Robb Stark walks forward with measured steps. His crown of iron and bronze catches the pale sunlight, and grey wind pads beside him like a living banner of House Stark. Behind him come the Greatjon, Rose Bolton, and a dozen other lords whose names are written in northern history. They meet in the center of the ruined hall, 2 young men who command armies that could break kingdoms. For a long moment, neither speaks. They study each other with the wariness of wolves and the calculating gaze of leaders who have learned that words can kill as surely as steel. "You are smaller than I expected," Drogo says finally, in accented common tongue. "You are younger," Robb replies. Around them, the tension could be cut with a blade. 40,000 Dothraki warriors watch their Khal face this foreign boy king. 30,000 Northmen see their young wolf stand before the most feared warlord in Essos. Any wrong move, any misunderstood gesture could turn this parley into the bloodiest battle the realm has ever seen. Then Robb nods, appreciating the directness. "Plain words, then. The Lannisters murdered my father, scattered my family, and burned my lands. You fight to reclaim your family's throne. Perhaps our goals align." "Perhaps," Daenerys says carefully. "But alignment requires trust. What proof do we have that the North would honor agreements made here?" "What proof do you need?" Robb counters. "The North remembers, Your Grace. We remember our oaths, our debts, and our grievances. House Stark has never broken its word. The great Jon steps forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over the negotiations. The boy speaks truth. When Starks swear oaths, they die before breaking them. Just ask the headsman who took Lord Eddard's head. The words hit like physical blows. Even Drogo, who cares little for southern politics, understands the weight of a man dying for honor. In his culture, such dedication earns respect. Your father was honorable, Daenerys acknowledges. My brother was not. Perhaps we can build something better than what came before. She turns to Drogo, switching to Dothraki. They speak in rapid, flowing syllables, while the Northmen wait in tense silence. Robb watches their exchange, noting how the call defers to his queen's judgment in matters of diplomacy, while she clearly values his assessment of military matters. My husband asks what you offer, Daenerys translates. Recognition of your rightful claim to the Iron Throne, Robb says without hesitation. Military alliance against our common enemies. And when the war is done, northern independence under a restored Targaryen monarchy. The offer hangs in the air like incense, heavy with possibility. Daenerys' eyes widen slightly. Recognition from one of the great kingdoms would legitimize her claim in ways that military conquest alone cannot achieve. And in return, she asks, help destroying the Lannisters, Robb says simply. Your armies join mine in a two-pronged assault on King's Landing. We take the capital together, then divide the spoils. You rule the 6 kingdoms from the Iron Throne. The North rules itself. Drogo speaks again in Dothraki, his tone sharp with interest. Daenerys nods and turns back to Robb. The Khal wishes to know of your victories. He has heard tales of the young wolf's cunning, but tales often lie. Pride flickers across Robb's young face. Ask your spies about the Whispering Wood, where I captured Jaime Lannister himself. Ask them about Oxcross, where I scattered Stafford Lannister's army like leaves. Ask them about the gold mines I've burned, the supply trains I've taken, the castles that now fly the direwolf banner. The great Jon grins fiercely. 20,000 men we've taken or killed, and we've lost fewer than 2,000. The boy fights like a king and thinks like a general. Drogo's scarred face shows the first hint of respect. Here is no soft lordling playing at war, but a leader who wins battles against experienced enemies. The Dothraki respect strength above all else, and strength recognizes strength. Show me, Drogo commands. Robb draws his sword, not in threat but in demonstration. The blade bears fresh nicks from recent combat, and dried blood stains the fuller. This is not a ceremonial weapon, but a tool of war, wielded by hands that know their business. In response, Drogo draws his arak. The curved steel gleams like captured moonlight, its edge honed to razor sharpness. For a heartbeat, both armies tense as their kings brandish weapons. Then Drogo nods approval and sheaths his blade. Robb follows suit. You fight, Drogo says simply. It is the highest compliment a Dothraki can give. I fight, Robb agrees. And I win. Daenerys watches this exchange of mutual respect with growing hope. These are not enemies forced into alliance by circumstance, but warriors who recognize kindred spirits across cultural divides. One final question, Robb says, as the formal negotiations conclude. When King's Landing falls and you sit the Iron Throne, what of justice? Will you punish only those who wronged your family, or will you visit fire and blood on everyone who served the usurper's line? It is the crucial question, the one that will determine whether this alliance survives its success. Daenerys considers carefully before answering. Justice, not vengeance, she says finally. Those who committed crimes against innocent people will answer for them. Those who simply served their lords will be pardoned. The realm has bled enough. Drogo grunts agreement. The strong rule the weak. It has always been so. But needless cruelty serves no purpose save to breed future enemies. Then we are agreed, Robb says, extending his hand. Drogo grasps it in the Dothraki fashion, forearm to forearm. We are agreed. Around them, 40,000 Dothraki raise a war cry that shakes the ancient stones of Harrenhal. 30,000 Northmen answer with their own battle roar. The sound carries for miles across the Riverlands, announcing to the world that the War of Five Kings has become something entirely different. The race for King's Landing begins at dawn. In the Red Keep, Grand Maester Pycelle reads the Raven Scroll with shaking hands. The parchment trembles as he absorbs words that spell doom for everyone in the capital. Alliance, he whispers. They've made alliance. Lord Tywin Lannister takes the message and reads it twice before crushing it in his mailed fist. For 40 years he has played the game of thrones, balancing threats and opportunities with cold calculation. Now the board has been overturned. How long? He asks. 3 days, my lord, stammers the messenger who brought the news. Perhaps 4 if they maintain baggage trains. Tywin stares out the window of his solar at the city below. 50,000 souls go about their daily business, unaware that 2 armies march toward them with murder in their hearts. His own forces number perhaps 15,000. Sellswords, City Watch, and the remnants of his host that survived Stannis' assault. 15,000 against 70,000. The mathematics of annihilation. Send ravens to all our allies, he commands. Promise them anything. Gold, marriages, lands. We need every sword we can gather. But even as he speaks, Tywin knows the truth. His allies are scattered across the realm, engaged in their own battles, or too distant to arrive in time. Kevan fights in the Riverlands. The Tyrells bend the knee to Renly. Stannis recovers on Dragonstone, wounded but not broken. My lord. Chapter 9. The Sack of King's Landing. The dragons of House Targaryen wake before dawn. From the south, 40,000 Dothraki flow across the fields outside King's Landing like a tide of bronze and death. Their horses' hooves thunder against the earth as they spread in a crescent formation, their war cries echoing off the capital's ancient walls. Bronze bells chime in the pre-dawn darkness, creating a symphony of violence that sends ravens fleeing from the battlements. From the north, 30,000 wolves and trouts march in disciplined columns along the King's Road. Their banners snap in the morning wind, the grey dire wolf of Stark, the silver trout of Tully, the broken chains of Karstark. Behind them roll the siege engines that will crack King's Landing like a nut. 2 armies converge on the greatest city in Westeros. 2 armies united by shared enemies and the promise of justice long delayed. Lord Tywin Lannister watches from the Red Keep's highest tower as destiny approaches on 70,000 legs. His golden armor catches the first rays of sunlight, but his lined face shows the weight of impossible mathematics. 15,000 defenders against 70,000 attackers. The bravest men in history could not hold against such odds. My lord, his captain of guards ventures, perhaps we should what? Tywin's voice cuts like a blade. Run, hide. I am Tywin Lannister. I do not flee from dogs. But even as he speaks, he knows the truth. This is not a siege that will last months. This is an execution, swift and final. Below in the city, bells ring the alarm as small folk flee toward whatever shelter they can find. Those with gold book passage on ships in the harbour. Those without crowd into septs and cellars, praying to gods who seem deaf to their pleas. The War of Five Kings ends today. Only one question remains. Who will survive to see its conclusion? The assault begins with Dothraki arrows. 10,000 horse archers spread across the southern approaches, their composite bows singing death songs as volleys darken the sky. The arrows fall like deadly rain on the defenders manning the walls, forcing them to shelter behind stone merlons. Now! Robb Stark's voice carries across the northern approach as his siege engines loose their first salvo. Catapult stones arc through the air to crash against the river gate. Ballista bolts punch through the wooden reinforcements King Joffrey ordered after Stannis' assault. The city shudders under the coordinated bombardment. Stone chips fly from the walls. Defenders cry out as arrows find gaps in their armor. The smell of smoke and blood begins to rise from the battlements. In the Red Keep's throne room, Queen Cersei clutches her youngest son as chaos erupts around them. Tommen shivers against her silk dress, too young to understand that his world burns outside these walls. "Mother," he whispers, "why are they shouting?" "Hush, my love," she replies, though her own voice shakes with terror. "Your grandfather will protect us." But Tywin Lannister has no miracles left to offer. His remaining forces spread too thin along miles of walls, facing enemies who strike from two directions at once. Every man he moves to counter one threat leaves another section vulnerable. "Fall back to the second gate," he commands, as Dothraki grappling hooks bite into the southern wall. "Collapse the outer defenses." His men obey, but retreat breeds panic. Soon withdrawal becomes rout, as bronze-skinned warriors vault the walls like deadly acrobats, their curved swords flashing in the morning light. Kojako leads the first wave over the wall. His arak takes the head of a Lannister sergeant before his boots touch the battlements. Behind him, a dozen blood riders spread along the wall walk, cutting down archers and spearmen with the fluid grace of dancers performing a deadly ballet. "The gate!" he shouts in Dothraki. "Open the gate!" Below in the gatehouse, Westerosi guards die before they can lower the portcullis. Dothraki riders pour through the breach like water through a broken dam, their horses' hooves striking sparks from the cobblestones as they flood into the city. King's Landing has fallen before, to Robert's hammer during the rebellion, to raiders and pirates in darker days. But never like this. Never to horse lords who know no mercy and fight with the fury of men who have crossed an ocean for this moment. The sack begins immediately. Dothraki warriors smash through doors with their araks, seeking gold and glory in equal measure. Shopkeepers die defending their wares. Nobles flee through back alleys while their mansions burn. The systematic violence of conquest flows through the city's arteries like poison. But this is not mindless slaughter. Khal Drogo has given orders. Take what can be carried, burn what cannot, but spare those who yield. The Dothraki are pragmatic in their brutality. Dead men pay no taxes, grow no crops, craft no goods. Some must survive to serve new masters. From the Red Gate, Robb Stark leads his own assault. The massive portal, weakened by catapult stones, splinters under the combined weight of northern axes and Riverland hammers. Grey wind bounds through the breach first, his direwolf fury clearing the way for his master's charge. Behind the young wolf come the Greatjon and 500 northern heavies, their two-handed swords sweeping aside Lannister resistance like wheat before the scythe. These are not the mobile raiders of the Dothraki, but the disciplined shock troops of the north, men who fight in formation and die hard. "For Winterfell," the Greatjon roars as his blade takes a gold cloak through the middle. "For Lord Eddard," the northern battle cry echoes through the streets as direwolf banners advance toward the Red Keep. Every step forward, avenges some slight, some murdered friend, some burned village. The North remembers, and today it collects its debts. Sir Jaime Lannister, if he were here, might have turned this charge with his skill and reputation. But Jaime remains Robb's prisoner in a cage, hundreds of miles from this disaster. Sir Boros Blount and Sir Meryn Trant are knights in name only, men who excel at beating children, but flee from real warriors. The Red Keep's outer yard falls within an hour. In his solar high above the battle, Tywin makes the calculation that will define his legacy. "Ready the children," he commands his remaining guards. "We evacuate to the harbour. Boats wait to carry them to Dragonstone." It is the choice of a grandfather over a general. Save what can be saved, even if it means abandoning everything else. Cersei and her children must survive, must escape to carry on the Lannister name when the city falls. But escape requires time, and time is the one thing his enemies will not give him. "My lord!" A messenger stumbles into the solar, his Lannister livery torn and bloody. "The Dothraki have breached Flea Bottom. They ride toward the Sept of Baelor." "And the northern forces?" "Fight in the Red Keep's outer bailey, my lord. They'll reach the throne room within the hour." Tywin nods grimly. Even less time than he hoped. "Signal the retreat. All remaining forces to the Maegor's hold fast. We make our stand there." But as he speaks, both men hear it, the sound that marks the end of Lannister power in King's Landing. Dothraki war cries echo through the Red Keep's courtyards, mixing with northern battle roars in a harmony of conquest. The capital has fallen. Now only the Iron Throne remains. Queen Cersei runs through corridors she has walked as a princess, a queen, a mother. Her silk slippers echo on stones still warm from wildfire residue, past tapestries that tell the history of dragons and conquest. Tommen struggles to keep pace, his small legs working hard to match his mother's desperate stride. Behind them, guards clash with invaders as bronze and steel meet red and gold in passages built for ceremony, not warfare. "Mother, I'm tired," Tommen gasps. "Just a little further, my love," she lies. The harbour sits across a city full of enemies. The Sept, where she once found sanctuary, crawls with foreign warriors. Every path to safety closes like a trap. A Dothraki warrior rounds the corner ahead, his arak red with noble blood. His eyes fix on the golden hair and silk dress that mark Cersei as valuable prey. She screams. The man dies with a crossbow bolt through his throat, shot by Sir Boros Blount from behind. But more come, always more, flowing through the Red Keep like water through a broken dam. "This way!" Blount shouts, leading them toward the Godswood. Perhaps they can hide among the trees until... The roof collapses as Kopono's riders take the floor above. Stone and timber rain down, crushing Sir Boros beneath rubble that weighs more than a dozen men. Cersei shields Tommen with her body as debris fills the passage. When the dust clears, her son lies still beneath a wooden beam that should have killed a grown man. The Queen of Westeros screams until her voice breaks. In the throne room, Khal Drogo stares at the Iron Throne with calculating eyes. The great seat rises before him like a monument to ambition made manifest. 1,000 swords, melted and forged by dragon fire, twisted into a chair that has held kings for 3 centuries. This is what he crossed an ocean to claim for his moon and stars. Around him, the great hall echoes with the sounds of conquest. His blood riders secure the entrances, while Dothraki warriors drag captured Lannisters before their call. Outside, the city burns and bleeds as 40,000 horse lords take their payment for the crossing. "Blood of my blood," Koholo approaches, with a golden-haired boy in tow. "We found this one hiding in the royal chambers." Joffrey Baratheon. No, Joffrey Waters, bastard born of incest, kneels before the Iron Throne with chains around his wrists. The boy who ordered Ned Stark's execution trembles like a leaf in wind, his purple doublet torn and stained with other men's blood. "You are the king?" Drogo asks in common tongue. "I am," Joffrey stammers, then thinks better of defiance. "I was. I yield. I surrender. Please don't." "Good," Drogo cuts him off. "Kings who yield live. Kings who fight die." He turns to study the Iron Throne again. In truth, it looks uncomfortable. All sharp edges and twisted metal. A seat designed to remind its occupant that ruling carries the weight of swords. A Dothraki Khal sits a horse, not a chair built from the weapons of the conquered. But this throne belongs to his Khaleesi, and what belongs to Daenerys belongs to him. The sound of northern boots on marble announces new arrivals. Robb Stark enters the throne room with grey wind at his side, his crown bloody but unbroken. Behind him come the lords, who have followed him across half the realm to this moment of victory. "Your Grace," Robb says to Drogo, inclining his head with the respect due a fellow king. "Your Grace," Drogo replies. They are equals here, partners in conquest. "The city?" "Falls," Drogo confirms. "Your men hold the Red Keep. Mine hold everything else. And the royal family?" Drogo's face darkens. The queen and her youngest are dead, killed when the roof fell during the fighting. He gestures toward Joffrey. This one yields. Robb studies the boy who ordered his father's death. For a moment, justice wars with pragmatism in his young face. Then he nods curtly. "A live prisoner is worth more than a dead enemy," he says. "For now." Outside the throne room's tall windows, King's Landing burns. Smoke rises from 100 fires as the greatest city in Westeros pays the price for its king's ambitions. But the burning will end, the smoke will clear, and from the ashes will rise something new. The Dragon Queen's reign begins today. When Daenerys Targaryen arrives to claim her birthright, she will find the Iron Throne waiting, warmed by the blood of those who stole it, paid for with the lives of 40,000 horses, and guarded by the wolves who chose alliance over enmity. The War of 5 Kings is over. The Age of Dragons begins again. Chapter 10. Queen of the Andals and the First Men. The Sept of Baelor stands wreathed in morning light, its 7 towers reaching toward heaven like supplicating hands. Within its marble walls, an unlikely congregation gathers for a ceremony that will reshape the 7 kingdoms forever. Daenerys Targaryen walks down the Sept's central aisle, wearing a gown of black silk embroidered with red dragons. Her silver-gold hair flows loose about her shoulders, crowned with a simple circlet of Valyrian steel. Not the grand crown of Aegon the Conqueror, which was lost with the dragons, but something new for a new age. Behind her walks Khal Drogo, his bronze bells silent out of respect for this strange Westerosi ritual. His hand rests on his arax's hilt, not in threat, but in promise. Any who would disturb this moment will answer to Dothraki steel. The High Septon waits at the altar, his crystal crown catching the light that streams through stained glass windows. Around him stand the remaining lords of the realm, those who bent the knee quickly enough to survive the conquest, those who chose wisdom over futile defiance. Who comes before the 7 to claim the Iron Throne of Westeros? The High Septon intones, his voice carrying to every corner of the Great Sept. "I do," Daenerys replies, her voice clear and strong. "I, Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, rightful Queen of the Andals and the First Men, Lady of the 7 Kingdoms, and Protector of the Realm." The ancient words echo through the Sept, the same formula spoken at every royal coronation for 3 centuries. But these words carry different weight, spoken by a queen whose claim rests not on conquest alone, but on the support of armies that have never knelt to southern kings. "And who speaks for your claim?" the Septon asks. Robb Stark steps forward, his crown of iron and bronze marking him as a king in his own right. When he speaks, his words carry the authority of a man who has never broken his oaths. "I, Robb Stark, king in the north, speak for Daenerys Targaryen's claim. By right of blood and conquest, by compact of alliance and mutual respect, I recognize her as rightful queen of the 6 kingdoms." The distinction is not lost on those who listen. 6 kingdoms, not 7. The North will remain independent under its own king, bound to the Iron Throne by alliance rather than fealty. "I, Doran Martell, Prince of Dawn, speak for her claim," comes another voice. The Dornish prince has travelled from Sunspear to witness this moment, his presence a signal that the realm's most independent kingdom chooses pragmatism over pride. Other voices follow. Lord Arryn speaking for the Vale, Lord Tyrell for the Reach, even old Lord Frey for the Riverlands. Not all are present, but enough to grant legitimacy to what follows. The High Septon lifts the crown, a new one, forged from gold, taken from Lannister vaults, and set with rubies that gleam like drops of blood. It is lighter than Aegon's crown, more elegant, but no less meaningful. "By the grace of the 7 who are one," he declares, "I crown thee Daenerys, first of her name, Queen of the Andals and the First Men, Lady of the 6 Kingdoms, and Protector of the Realm." The crown settles on silver hair like destiny made manifest. Around the sept, lords and ladies kneel as one, some willingly, others with the reluctance of those who recognize necessity. Outside, 40,000 Dothraki voices raised in victory cries that shake the very foundations of King's Landing. The Dragon Queen has come home. The Iron Throne sits empty when the royal party returns to the Red Keep. Daenerys stares up at the twisted mass of metal and memories, this seat that has held kings and driven them mad in equal measure. "It looks uncomfortable," she observes. "All thrones are uncomfortable," Jorah Mormont replies from his place beside her. "That's the point. A king should never rest easy." Around the throne room, her new court assembles. Lords who bent the knee early enough to save their necks stand beside Dothraki Ko, who understand nothing of southern politics, but know victory when they see it. The mixture of cultures creates an atmosphere of barely controlled tension. "Your Grace," Tyrion Lannister approaches with careful steps, his walking stick clicking on the marble floor. The former hand has survived the conquest through a combination of wit and the protection of his captor, his own brother, Jaime, still technically Robb Stark's prisoner. "Lord Tyrion," Daenerys acknowledges, "you served my enemies faithfully. Why should I trust you to serve me at all?" "Because I served the realm, not the Lannisters," Tyrion replies without hesitation. "And because a queen needs advisers who know how to make the machinery of government function. I may be a kinslayer and a drunkard, but I understand coin and law and how to keep 6 kingdoms from tearing themselves apart." It is a practical argument, and practicality has kept Daenerys alive through exile and slavery and war. She nods slowly. "We shall see. For now, you may remain. But know that your brother's life guarantees your loyalty." She turns to address the broader assembly. "A crown is won by swords, but a kingdom is ruled by wisdom. We have taken this throne through force of arms, but we will hold it through justice and good governance." The words sound noble, but even as she speaks, Daenerys can hear the sounds of the city beyond these walls. Dothraki victory celebrations that sound like riots to Westerosi ears, the clash of foreign customs against settled civilization. Ruling will be harder than conquering. In Flea Bottom, Kopono's riders have turned a tavern into their temporary Kaleri. Bronze-skinned warriors drink ale from horns and sing victory songs in Dothraki, while terrified serving girls try to avoid their grasping hands. This is the problem Daenerys faces, an army of conquest trying to settle into a city built for merchants and craftsmen. The Dothraki understand raids and tribute, not taxes and trade. They know how to take wealth, but not how to create it. "Blood of my blood," Kopono addresses Drogo as the Khal arrives with his blood riders. The men grow restless. They ask when we ride again, when we take fresh plunder. Drogo studies his warriors with calculating eyes. These men followed him across the narrow sea for gold and glory. They have taken the greatest city in Westeros and placed his Khaleesi on its throne. But now what? "The Khaleesi rules from the stone house," he says carefully. "We guard her throne." "For how long?" Kopono presses. "The grass grows long in the east. The Kaleri here stink of fish and fear." It is the eternal challenge of the nomad. How to remain still when every instinct demands movement. The Dothraki are riders, raiders, men who measure wealth in horses and distance in horizons. King's Landing offers neither. "We adapt," Drogo says finally. "The strong survive by changing. The weak die because they cannot." But even he knows the truth. His Khalasar cannot remain in this stone city forever. Eventually, they must find new purpose, or they will turn on each other out of boredom and frustration. The small council meets for the first time in the chamber overlooking Blackwater Bay. Daenerys sits at the head of a table that has seen the rise and fall of dynasties, surrounded by advisors who represent the new reality of her reign. Tyrion Lannister serves as hand, his quick wit and knowledge of the realm's workings making him invaluable despite his questionable loyalties. Jorah Mormont holds the position of Lord Commander, his dual knowledge of Westeros and Essos bridging two worlds. Qyburn, the former Maester, serves as Master of Whisperers. His network of informants survived the conquest largely intact. Lord Paxter Redwyne, who bent the knee early, commands the royal fleet as Master of Ships. The newest addition is Drogo, one of Drogo's blood riders, who holds the unprecedented position of Master of Horse. The Dothraki contingent must be represented in government if this fusion of cultures is to work. "First order of business," Daenerys announces, "is justice for those who wronged the realm under the previous regime." "How public do you want these executions?" Tyrion asks pragmatically. "Public enough to establish our authority, private enough to avoid making martyrs," she replies. "Joffrey dies tomorrow at dawn, beheaded in the castle yard for the murder of Lord Eddard Stark and his crimes against the innocent." "And the other Lannister supporters?" "Case by case. Those who committed atrocities die. Those who simply served their lords are pardoned, but stripped of titles. We need administrators more than we need corpses." It is a moderate approach by conquest standards, designed to establish authority without creating unnecessary enemies. But even moderation has its limits. "What of Lord Tywin?" Jorah asks carefully. "Lord Tywin died in the battle," Daenerys says simply, "crushed when a wall fell. Very tragic." The euphemism fools no one. Tywin Lannister was executed privately, his death made to look accidental, to avoid the political complications of publicly killing such a prominent figure. Sometimes mercy and pragmatism demand the same course. Ravens fly from the Red Keep's rookery, carrying messages to every corner of the realm. Each bears the three-headed dragon seal and the signature of a queen who must establish her authority through words as well as swords. To Winterfell goes confirmation of northern independence and the formal treaty between Queen Daenerys and King Robb. To the Vale goes an offer of renewed friendship and favorable trade terms. To Dorne goes recognition of their ancient autonomy and promises of justice for past wrongs. The most delicate message goes to Old Town and the Reach, where Renly's army still gathers strength. That letter offers pardons for past opposition, confirms existing lords in their holdings, and suggests marriages that might bind the Reach to the new regime. "Will they accept?" Daenerys asks, as the ravens disappear into the evening sky. "Some will," Tyrion replies. "Others will test your resolve. But rebellion requires hope, and hope requires the possibility of victory. What possible victory can they claim against 40,000 Dothraki and 30,000 Northmen?" "They might seek foreign aid," Jorah suggests. "Stannis still lives on Dragonstone. The Free Cities might support a restoration if it serves their interests." "Then we must give them stronger interests in supporting us," Daenerys concludes. "Trade agreements, marriage alliances, whatever it takes to make cooperation more profitable than opposition." She moves to the window overlooking the city. Below, King's Landing spreads like a jewel beside the water, its streets bustling with activity as the capital adapts to its new rulers. Dothraki riders patrol the main thoroughfares, while Westerosi guards maintain order in the smaller districts. It is working, this fusion of cultures. Not perfectly, not easily, but it is working. "Your Grace," Qyburn approaches with a leather satchel. "Reports from our informants in the other kingdoms." She takes the messages, scanning quickly through intelligence gathered by the network of spies and merchants who trade in information. The contents are encouraging. Most lords speak of submission rather than rebellion, of adapting to the new reality rather than fighting it. "The Vale lords debate openly about sending an envoy," she reads. "Lord Arryn counsels peace, and his voice carries weight. And the Reach? Mixed. Some speak of bending the knee. Others whisper of supporting Stannis or finding another claimant. But their voices grow quieter each day. Time favors the established power. Each day that passes without successful rebellion makes the new order seem more permanent, more inevitable. Soon, supporting Daenerys will seem like wisdom rather than surrender." "Send another message to Lord Renly," Daenerys decides. "Offer him Storm's End and a place on the small council. Sometimes it's better to buy loyalty than to demand it." The preparations continue into the night. A realm must be governed, alliances maintained, potential enemies converted into friends. The work of conquest ends with victory, but the work of ruling never ends at all. Outside the Red Keep's windows, King's Landing settles into uneasy sleep under foreign banners. In the harbour, ships arrive with tribute and traders eager to curry favour with the new regime. The city adapts because cities always adapt. They survive by serving whoever holds power. The Dragon Queen sits the Iron Throne, supported by wolves from the north and horses from the east. It is an unprecedented alliance, a fusion of cultures that should not work, but does. The realm holds its breath and waits to see what this new age will bring. Chapter 11. The Price of Conquest. The raven arrives at dawn, its black wings cutting through the morning mist that rises from Blackwater Bay. In its claws it carries news that will test the Dragon Queen's resolve and remind her that crowns are easier won than worn. Daenerys breaks the seal in her solar high above King's Landing, her violet eyes scanning words that speak of rebellion and resistance. Around her, the sounds of a city adapting to foreign rule drift through tall windows, Dothraki war songs mixing uneasily with the calls of Westerosi merchants, bronze bells chiming discord with the sept bells that mark the hours. "Trouble?" Jorah asks from his place by the door. "Lord Davin Lannister has raised his banners in the Westerlands," she replies, setting the message aside. 3,000 men, maybe more. They've taken Lannisport and declared me a foreign usurper. Davin was always loyal to his family, Tyrion observes from across the room. The former hand limps to the window, his walking stick clicking on the marble floor. But 3,000 men, that's more desperation than strength. Desperation can be dangerous, Daenerys warns. Desperate men do desperate things. As if summoned by her words, another raven arrives, this one bearing the seal of Dragonstone. Stannis Baratheon's message is shorter, but no less troubling. "I do not recognize the authority of foreign savages, or the bastard spawn of mad kings. The Iron Throne belongs to the rightful heir by blood and law. I will reclaim what is mine." The one-time Lord of Storm's End has not been idle since his defeat at the Blackwater. Intelligence reports suggest he rebuilds his strength, gathering sellswords from across the narrow sea and rallying lords who prefer his grim legitimacy to dragon rule backed by Dothraki steel. "Two fires burning," Jorah notes grimly. "East and west." "Three," Daenerys corrects, as a third message arrives. This one bears no seal, only a crude drawing of a 7-pointed star. The contents make her blood run cold. "Foreign whore and heathen queen, your reign of blood ends soon. The gods will not suffer barbarians to rule the faithful. Repent or burn." The faith militant has returned. In the Westerlands, Lannisport burns for the second time in a generation. Lord Davin Lannister stands on the walls of his ancestral port, watching Dothraki riders flow through the streets like a bronze tide. His 3,000 men fought bravely, held the walls for 6 hours against Kojako's assault. But numbers tell in the end. They always do. "My lord," Sir Forley Prester approaches, with blood on his sword and defeat in his eyes. "The harbour is lost. Their ships blockade the bay, while their riders take the docks." Davin nods grimly. He had known this moment would come when he raised his banners in defiance of the Dragon Queen. Known it and done it anyway, because some things matter more than survival. "Gather the survivors," he commands. "We retreat to Casterly Rock. Let them take this port. They cannot hold it without ships and men who know its waters." But even as he speaks, Davin knows the retreat will not save them. The Dothraki have learned to take castles, and Casterly Rock, mighty as it is, cannot withstand the siege engines that toppled King's Landing. The real question is how many good men will die for Lannister pride before the end comes. Below in the burning streets, Kojako's riders pursue fleeing soldiers with the methodical efficiency of wolves hunting deer. This is not the glorious conquest of King's Landing, but the grinding work of putting down rebellion, necessary, brutal, and ultimately thankless. "Take prisoners who yield," Jako commands his men. "Kill those who run, and burn the ships in the harbour. Let no word of this defeat spread to encourage other fools." The sack of Lannisport sends a message across the Westerlands: resist and burn, submit and live. Most lords choose wisdom over honour, but enough choose defiance to keep the Dragon Queen's armies busy, crushing sparks before they become fires. In King's Landing's Sept of Baelor, the most devout gather in emergency session as reports arrive of atrocities committed in the name of the Seven. "They butcher Septons who refuse to preach submission," reads Septon Reynard, his voice shaking with outrage. "They stable their horses in the starry Sept of Old Town. They mock our gods and call them weak. Some Dothraki, High Septon Tyrion corrects carefully. Not all. The Queen has issued orders. Orders! Septon Olidor slams his fist on the marble table. What good are orders to heathens who worship horse gods and blood magic? They defile everything sacred, yet we are told to call them protectors of the realm. The faith's anger has been building for weeks. Stories spread through the holy community like wildfire. Dothraki warriors using sept chalices as drinking cups. Stable boys reporting horses, relieving themselves on altar stones, and worse rumors that speak of blood sacrifice and pagan rituals performed in sacred groves. The warriors' sons must return, declares Septon Luceon. The faith needs its own swords to defend against these outrages. The crown disbanded the faith militant centuries ago, the High Septon warns, to reform them without royal permission. What royal permission? Olidor spits. From a foreign whore who lets barbarians spit on the Seven? She has no authority in the eyes of the gods. The vote, when it comes, is not unanimous, but it is decisive. The faith militant will return, with or without crown approval. The Seven demand nothing less than the defense of their sacred places and the expulsion of foreign corruption from Westerosi soil. By nightfall, young men across the capital sharpen swords and bind 7-pointed stars to their arms. The faithful will no longer suffer in silence. In Flea Bottom, Khal Drogo faces his own rebellion. Kopono stands before the fire with a dozen other riders, their bronze bells chiming defiance as they voice complaints that have festered for weeks. Behind them, the Khalasar spreads through the lower city like a cancer. 40,000 warriors growing restless in a place that offers no grass, no horizons, no enemies worthy of their blades. How long? Pono demands in rapid Dothraki. How long do we sit in this stone Kaliri that stinks of fish and fear? Until the Khaleesi commands otherwise, Drogo replies, but even he can hear the uncertainty in his own voice. The men speak of riding east, Pono continues, back to the grass sea, back to the places where horses can run free. This is no place for Dothraki. Around the fire, grumbles of agreement rise from the assembled riders. These are warriors who have followed Drogo across the narrow sea for gold and glory, who conquered the greatest city in Westeros in his name. But conquest and occupation are different beasts entirely. The Khaleesi sits the iron chair, Drogo says carefully. She rules 6 kingdoms now. Great honor for the Kalaka, who comes from her body. What honor is there in guarding stone walls? Kojako asks. What glory in keeping peace among sheep? We are riders, not city guards. The complaint strikes home because Drogo feels it too. Every instinct screams for movement, for the feel of grass beneath his horse's hooves and the wind in his face. King's Landing offers wealth beyond measure, but wealth is meaningless without the freedom to enjoy it. We adapt, he says finally, using the same words he spoke weeks ago, but with less conviction. The strong survive by changing. But adaptation has limits, and those limits grow closer. Each day his Khalasar remains trapped in this maze of stone and politics. The assassination attempt comes at midnight. Sir Ilyn Payne moves through the Red Keep's corridors like a ghost, his footsteps silent on stones worn smooth by centuries of royal feet. The king's former executioner knows every secret passage, every hidden door, every way to reach the royal chambers without detection. In his hand he carries a blade poisoned with the tears of Lys, tasteless, odorless, and inevitably fatal. One scratch will send the foreign whore to whatever hells await kinslayers and usurpers. But Ser Ilyn has forgotten that dragons are protected by more than stone walls. The Dothraki guard sees him coming long before he reaches the royal suite. Belwas moves like liquid death, his arak singing from its sheath to open the mute knight's throat, before he can raise his poisoned blade. The commotion wakes half the Red Keep. Guards pour into the corridors as Daenerys emerges from her chambers, her hair loose about her shoulders, but her eyes sharp with alertness. "Who?" she asks, staring down at Sir Ilyn's corpse. "Sir Ilyn Payne," Jorah identifies, former headsman to Robert Baratheon, likely sent by Stannis or the Lannister remnants. Daenerys kneels beside the body, studying the poisoned blade with professional interest. This is not the first assassination attempt since her coronation, nor will it be the last. The crown that Robert won through rebellion draws ambitious men, like honey draws flies. "Double the guards," she commands, "and send word to our spies in Dragonstone and Casterly Rock. I want to know who ordered this before the sun rises." But even as she speaks, Daenerys knows the larger truth. One assassin died tonight, but 10 more plot in shadow. This is the price of ruling through conquest, eternal vigilance against those who would rather see the realm burn than accept foreign rule. The logistics meeting convenes in the small council chamber as dawn breaks over King's Landing. "Food," Grandmaster Qyburn states bluntly, spreading ledgers across the table like accusations. "We cannot feed 40,000 additional mouths indefinitely. The city's granaries empty faster than ships can replenish them." "What about tribute from the other kingdoms?" Daenerys asks. "The Reach sends grain, but slowly," Tyrion replies. "Lord Tyrell plays careful politics, enough support to avoid punishment, not enough to suggest enthusiasm. Dawn sends gold, but little food. The Vale, well, the Vale does what the Vale always does. Nothing. And housing. Flea Bottom overflows," Qyburn continues. "Disease spreads where too many people crowd into too little space. The Dothraki refuse to live in the upper city among the nobles, but Flea Bottom cannot hold them all." Jorah leans forward. "Perhaps we should consider dispersing the Khalasar. Station riders in the other kingdoms use them to enforce the Queen's peace. Dangerous," Tyrion warns. 40,000 Dothraki dispersed among a hostile population? That's how uprisings begin, not how they're prevented. "Then what do you suggest?" Daenerys demands. "Time," Tyrion says simply. "Time for the realm to accept your rule, for trade to resume, for the wounds of conquest to heal. But time requires patience, and patience requires surviving until it arrives." The meeting continues for hours, but the problems remain the same. An army of conquest must somehow transform into a force for stability, while maintaining enough strength to crush the rebellions that sprout like weeds across the realm. Outside the chamber's windows, King's Landing wakes to another day under dragon rule. Dothraki riders patrol streets where Faith militant cells plot in shadows. Merchants count coins while septons sharpen swords. The city adapts because it must, but adaptation comes at a price measured in blood and gold. The Dragon Queen rules 6 kingdoms, but ruling and holding are different challenges entirely. Each day brings new tests of her resolve, new threats to the peace she has tried to build on foreign foundations. In the distance, smoke rises from the Westerlands where rebellion burns. Closer to home, the Faith militant gathers strength in prayer and planning. And in her own Red Keep, 40,000 allies grow restless with the burden of being protectors rather than conquerors. The crown sits heavy on Daenerys Targaryen's head, weighted with the knowledge that victory in war is only the first step toward victory in peace. The hardest battles may yet lie ahead. Chapter 12. The Dragon and the Horse. 6 months after the conquest, King's Landing wakes to the sound of wedding bells. The great sept overflows with nobles from across the realm, their colourful banners creating a tapestry of alliance and submission. Lords who once plotted rebellion now smile and offer gifts, their daughters dressed in silk and jewels as they prepare to bind their houses to the new regime through marriage and blood. Daenerys Targaryen sits upon a throne carried from the Red Keep for this occasion, her crown catching the morning light as she watches the ceremony that will cement her rule. Beside her, Khal Drogo stands in magnificent Dothraki ceremony dress, leather and bronze worked with silver threads, his bells silent in respect for Westerosi custom. At the altar, Sir Loras Tyrell takes the hand of Shireen Baratheon in marriage, their union symbolizing the peaceful integration of former enemies into the Dragon Queen's kingdom. What began as political necessity has grown into something approaching genuine affection between the young knight and the grayscale-scarred princess. "Who comes before the Seven to witness this union?" the High Septon asks. "I do," Daenerys replies, her voice carrying to every corner of the Great Sept. "I, Daenerys, first of her name, Queen of the Andals and the First Men, give my blessing to this marriage." The words carry weight beyond ceremony. Shireen Baratheon was taken when her father Stannis fell at the Battle of the Gullet 3 months past, his attempt to retake King's Landing ending with dragonfire, for dragons have returned to Westeros, though not in the form men expected. The Dragon Queen's mercy in sparing his daughter and arranging this marriage speaks to a new kind of rule, one built on integration rather than extermination. "And I," declares Mace Tyrell, from his place among the great lords. House Tyrell stands with House Targaryen, bound by love and loyalty. The Reach has come fully into the Queen's peace, their vast grain supplies and trade networks now serving the Iron Throne rather than opposing it. Lord Tyrell himself married a Lysene banking heiress 2 months past, cementing trade agreements that have begun to restore the realm's economy. In the Red Keep's training yards, a different kind of integration takes place. Kojako moves among young Westerosi knights like a bronze-skinned wolf teaching sheep to hunt. His curved arak demonstrates forms unknown to traditional swordplay, while his students, second sons and landless knights seeking advancement in the new order, struggle to adapt their rigid techniques to the fluid grace of Dothraki combat. "Faster," he commands in accented common tongue. "Horse moves like wind, enemy moves like stone. Wind cuts stone." Among his pupils, Sir Podrick Payne, elevated to knighthood for his loyalty during the transition, struggles with a practice arak while sweat streams down his face. The former squire has proven himself valuable in the new order, his knowledge of court protocol helping bridge the gap between Dothraki directness and Westerosi formality. "Again," Jarko orders as Podrick stumbles through a complex sequence. "Royal cavalry must be perfect. Queen's life depends on your skill." This is Drogo's masterstroke, transforming his Khalasar from an occupying army into an elite royal guard. Rather than letting 40,000 warriors grow restless in the capital, he has dispersed them across the realm as the Crown's cavalry, stationed at strategic castles and answering directly to the Iron Throne. It preserves their warrior culture while giving them purpose beyond conquest. The adaptation has not been without cost. Some resisted the changes and were quietly sent east with gold and ships, free to seek other Khalasars rather than remain where they no longer fit. But those who remained have embraced their new role as the Dragon Queen's sword and shield. The Queen rides to the harbour at midday, Jarko announces to his trainees. 20 men will escort. Who among you is worthy? The competition that follows would make Dothraki riders proud. These Westerosi knights have learned more than swordplay. They have absorbed something of the Horse Lord's spirit, the fierce pride that makes them more than mere soldiers. At the harbour, merchant ships from across the known world crowd the docks like floating cities. The Pentoshi trading galley Golden Wind unloads Essosi silks and spices, while Bravosi Iron Bank representatives conduct business beneath purple awnings. Volantena traders haggle with Dornish wine merchants, while Tiroshi merchants display dyes that shine like captured rainbows. This is the true victory, not the conquest itself, but the prosperity that follows. The realm's civil wars had strangled trade for years, but the Dragon Queen's peace has opened new channels of commerce. Her marriage to a Dothraki Carl has connected Westeros to the vast trading networks of Essos in ways Robert's reign never achieved. Your Grace, Master of Coin Bronn approaches, with ledgers tucked under his arm. The former sellsword has proven surprisingly adept at managing the realm's finances, his street-smart cunning translating well to matters of trade and taxation. The numbers? Daenerys asks. Better each month, he grins. Tax revenues up 30% from last year. The harbour fees alone have tripled since we reopened trade with the free cities. And the kingdom's debts? To the Iron Bank, paid in full last month. Turns out having 40,000 Dothraki collect taxes makes people remarkably prompt with their payments. The jest draws a smile from the Queen, though both know the truth beneath it. The Dothraki presence has indeed encouraged compliance, but the real source of prosperity is stability. When lords know their lands will not be burned by rival armies, they invest in improvements. When merchants know their ships will not be seized by competing claimants, they risk larger cargoes. Peace, it seems, is remarkably profitable. In the Sept's crypts beneath King's Landing, a different kind of resolution takes place. The High Septon kneels before the altar, where Stannis Baratheon's remains lie in state, the former claimant's body bearing the marks of dragonfire despite the embalmer's best efforts. Around him, representatives of the faith gather to witness the final act of a drama that nearly tore the realm apart. The faith militant is disbanded, the High Septon announces, his words echoing off stone walls carved with 7-pointed stars. By royal decree and sacred oath, we return to the paths of peace. The agreement had been hard won, after the faith's uprising reached its peak with the siege of the Great Sept. Daenerys had been forced to choose between slaughter and compromise. She chose neither, instead offering a third path. The faith could keep its autonomy in spiritual matters while accepting crown authority in temporal ones. The warriors' sons would become the faith's ceremonial guard, armed with wooden swords and forbidden to shed blood. And the foreign practices? Asks Septon Olidor, still bitter despite his submission. Will be contained within the Khalasar's own quarters, the High Septon replies. The Queen has given her word. No Dothraki rituals in sacred spaces, no bloodshed on holy ground. It is compromise rather than victory, but compromise that allows both sides to claim they preserved what matters most. The faith keeps its spiritual authority, while the crown maintains political control. The Dothraki keep their customs while respecting Westerosi sacred spaces. The realm has suffered enough divisions, the High Septon concludes. Let us bind the wounds rather than opening new ones. In her private chambers, high above the city, Daenerys stands before a window that overlooks her kingdom. 6 months of rule have changed her, as much as they have changed the realm. The girl who crossed the narrow sea with dreams of conquest has become a queen who understands the weight of responsibility. The crown that once seemed her birthright now feels like a burden willingly accepted. Moon of my life, Drogo enters quietly, his bronze bells chiming softly. Even he has adapted to royal protocol, though he draws the line at removing his bells entirely. "How did the council meeting proceed?" she asks without turning from the window. "Lord Tyrion speaks too much, but his words have wisdom," Drogo replies in common tongue that has grown more fluent with each passing month. "The North sends grain, the Vale sends silver, Dawn sends promises of future cooperation. And our own holdings? Stable. The KO report no major troubles in their territories. Some grumbling about taxes, but no rebellion. Daenerys nods, processing the information that would once have seemed impossible. 6 months ago, half the realm was in open revolt. Now the greatest problems are bureaucratic complaints about tax collection. "There is other news," Drogo continues, moving to stand beside her at the window. "The Maester confirms what we suspected." She places her hand on her belly, where new life grows beneath silk and steel. The pregnancy has been carefully hidden for weeks, while Maesters conducted their examinations, and the Queen considered the political implications. "A son?" she asks. "Too early to know," Drogo replies. "But strong. The child of the dragon and the horse will be mighty." Outside their window, King's Landing bustles with the activity of a prosperous city. Dothraki riders patrol streets where merchants hawk their wares. Northern soldiers share ale with Dornish guards, while children play in courtyards that once ran red with civil war blood. "What shall we call him?" Daenerys asks. "If it is a son?" "Rhaego," Drogo says immediately. For the prince, who should have been king, had the usurper not killed him. Rhaego Targaryen, she tests the name, first of his name, heir to the Iron Throne. It is more than a child's name. It is a promise, the promise that this dynasty will endure, that the peace won through alliance and compromise will outlast those who forged it. And if it is a daughter, then she will be Khaleesi of the greatest Khalasar in the world, Drogo grins, Queen of 6 kingdoms and Princess of the Dothraki Sea. The announcement comes at sunset, as the city prepares for the feast celebrating the Tyrell Baratheon wedding. Daenerys stands on the Red Keep's highest balcony, her voice carrying across the courtyard to the assembled crowds below. Lords and ladies, merchants and craftsmen, Dothraki riders and Westerosi soldiers all crane their necks to hear words that will echo through history. "People of King's Landing," she calls, her voice strong despite the early months of pregnancy. "People of the 7, 6 kingdoms. Today we celebrate more than a wedding between noble houses. We celebrate the birth of a new age." The crowd murmurs with anticipation as guards move to ensure order. 6 months ago, this realm tore itself apart in civil war. Brother fought brother, king contested king, while the people suffered under the weight of ambition and greed. Today, that war ends not in conquest, but in cooperation. She pauses, letting the words sink in before continuing. House Targaryen returns not as conquerors but as healers. House Stark rules the North, not as subjects but as allies. The Dothraki serve not as occupiers but as protectors. Together, we have forged something new, a kingdom united not by force but by choice. And to seal this union, she continues, her hand moving to rest on her belly, the gods have blessed this realm with new hope. In 7 months' time, a prince or princess will be born to continue the line of dragons and ensure the prosperity of this kingdom. The roar that follows shakes the very foundations of the Red Keep. From the courtyard to the streets beyond, 40,000 voices raised in celebration create a sound like thunder rolling across the city. In the crowd below, Robb Stark raises his cup in salute, while his queen acknowledges him with a nod. Their alliance has become something approaching friendship, built on mutual respect and shared victory. The wolf and the dragon have learned to hunt together. Beside the Northern King, Lord Tyrrell beams with satisfaction, while his new good daughter Shireen curtsies gracefully. The Reach has prospered under the new order, their grain feeding both Dothraki horses and Westerosi smallfolk. "Long live the Queen!" someone shouts, and the cry is taken up by thousands of throats. "Long live Queen Daenerys! Long live the dragon!" As the celebration continues into the night, Daenerys allows herself a moment of satisfaction. The throne room below holds the Iron Throne, that twisted monument to conquest and ambition. But the real throne is here, on this balcony, looking out over a kingdom finally at peace. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new problems requiring solutions, new tests of the fragile stability they have built. But tonight, for the first time since crossing the narrow sea, Daenerys allows herself to believe that the realm might truly heal. The War of 5 Kings is over. The Age of Dragons has begun. And in the harbour below, ships from across the known world carry news of this moment to every corner of the earth. The tale of how a dragon queen and her horse, Lord Husband, forged a kingdom from the ashes of civil war. How wolves and dragons learned to hunt together. And how the Iron Throne was won not through fire and blood alone, but through alliance and the wisdom to know when conquest must become cooperation. The bells of King's Landing ring through the night, marking not just a royal pregnancy, but the birth of a new world. One where different peoples can forge unity without losing their distinct characters, where strength serves justice rather than ambition, and where the throne serves the realm instead of the realm serving the throne. In the end, that may be the greatest victory of all.